Meeting, oh, we're short a couple of people.
Well, that's okay. We can,
For Tuesday, March 28th, couple of announcements. There's a 40B proposal at the site of the Waldo Durgan garage at the corner of John and Pleasant Street, and we held a public hearing on that 40B proposal a couple of months ago. The 40B proposal has been revised, and we're going to be holding another public hearing on the revision possibly as soon as next week. I think we need to figure that out, either next week or the week after. The developer is engaging in a hopefully friendly process to redevelop that parcel, but this is independent of the of that process. So we've been granted additional time to provide comments on the on that project. So I hope folks who live in that area, they'll be notified and they'll give us their opinion on, instead of a 21-story glass tower, the 40B proposes a 12-story glass tower. Also, we're in the midst of Climate Week, and there's a lot of activity going on. And tonight is the Climate Cafe at Temple Sinai from 7 to 8:30. For those of you who aren't raptly attentive of this meeting, you can go there. Other events, there's an event, Activism in Massachusetts, at All Saints Parish tomorrow at 7 p.m. There's a film program at United Parish on Friday, and a Green Roots bike tour of Brookline on Saturday. The 3R Depot, Pitch In to Reduce, Reuse, Recycle, Education Action Fund for the whole family at the Pierce School and Town School and Town Hall parking lot. So a lot of stuff is happening. Anyone else?
Me.
Yeah.
Do you have anything?
Selectman Green.
I just want to let people know that we had a very successful forum coming to America on the various issues related to immigration issues and towns. The town's response to that, I gave a presentation on the issues that are coming before the Board of Selectmen, based on largely our statement of was it March 7th or February? In February, four-part statement, and you may recall that, or you may know that Attorney General Sessions came out with a big blustering statement about towns, threatening towns who do not cooperate with immigration enforcement, threatening them with cuts in federal funding. Of course, it was really bluster, because the only things that he has any authority to cut back are grants from the Office of Justice Programs, and under Obama, in fact, towns and cities had to certify that they were not impeding communications between towns and the federal government with respect to immigration, and that is the only club he has over our heads, and that's a fairly weak club at that. But we should just be aware that it reflects the fact that when we're dealing with these immigration issues and ensuring that our police are not being what's called commandeered by the federal government to do their work, that we do it very, very carefully, very thoughtfully, And I think if we do it that way, we'll be in good shape to withstand any threats coming down from the federal government. So.
Anyone else? Yeah. Selectman Daley.
I just wanted to report to the rest of the committee that the Ninth School Building Committee met this morning. We did pick a preferred option among the options we've been looking at, and I'm happy to report that the committee picked the one that is the greenest. It's oriented the best way for the sun and for daylighting and for solar, and I think it also has some advantages, particularly for the nearby neighbors in terms of it's a kind of tiered option. So instead of presenting a solid wall that some of the neighbors would be looking at and that bus noises might be hitting against, it breaks that mass up a bit. And it also had the other advantage of being, it has some common spaces in the middle between these different tiers and common work areas, and so it was the one that was favored by the superintendent for educational reasons. So I think it had a lot going for it. I don't know if Mel wants to add anything, but we're moving along on that.
Sounds like all the parties came together for the most part.
Yeah, on the committee, yes.
Yeah.
I will say, we're still having a group of lawyers from the neighbors come to our I think the lawyers actually outnumbered other citizens at this last meeting who are not happy with the whole project, but, there you go.
Anyone else? Okay, public comment. Joan Corey? 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Joan Corey, and I'm a business agent from Teamsters Local Union Number 25 in Boston. I am proud to have the opportunity to represent the Brookline Public Safety Dispatchers. They serve the residents and the entire community of Brookline with great distinction and work under difficult and often highly stressful conditions. I would like to point out that these employees are currently working under an expired collective bargaining agreement. It expired in June of 2015. From 2015 to as recently as yesterday, we, meaning the public safety dispatchers, Teamsters Local Union 25, and the town, have been working diligently to deliver a reasonable agreement. And again, that's since June of 2015. I stand before you tonight to make you aware of a decision that we were informed that Mel Kleckner, town administrator, made yesterday afternoon. We were told he chose to reject a mediator's recommended proposals presented to him late yesterday afternoon. There have been extensive time and Brookline resources utilized since 2015 to reach an agreement. We believe Town Administrator Kleckner's decision does not reflect the town of Brookline's mission by focusing efforts on the town's most valuable assets, its employees. Nor do these type of actions strive to attract, develop, and retain productive workforce and foster a positive work environment that inspires excellence, which accordingly to the town is the human resource mission. I would like to give you a brief overview of the Brookline Public Safety Dispatch Center. It operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is currently staffed by only 14 full-time emergency telecommunication dispatchers. The dispatchers of Brookline Public Safety Dispatch Center are provided many opportunities both by Brookline Police, Fire Department, as well as outside agencies so that they can best understand the many challenges being faced in today's public safety environment, which the dispatchers have a major role in. How am I on time?
2 more minutes.
The Brookline Public Safety Dispatch Center has been preparing for Nextel Generation 911 technology and equipment provided by Massachusetts State 911 and General Dynamics Information Technology. These installations will continue to roll out throughout 2017 and will be the state-of-the-art for the Commonwealth. New enhancements should be completed very soon, and it will be the most recent update, last since updated in 2006. In closing, I would like to emphasize that the dispatchers are the heartbeat of public safety in the town of Brookline. All emergency phone calls originate here, transmissions are deciphered, specified protocol is implemented, and notification to all public safety officials begins and continues through any given call and situation. Public safety dispatchers are essential in ensuring that when police officers and firemen are sent out on calls, that they always return home safely. On behalf of the Brookline Public Safety Dispatchers, I ask that you all encourage your town administrator, Mel Kleckner, to reconsider the mediator recommended proposals presented to you late yesterday afternoon after we sat in close to 7 hours of mediation. I repeat, there has been extensive time and Brookline resources utilized since 2015 to reach a fair, reasonable, collective bargaining agreement for all. Thank you all for your opportunity to address this very important issue. We very much look forward to a speedy resolution. I have provided my contact information below. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to our calendar. We have minutes from March 17th to 21. March 17th and March 21, we had a short meeting on the 21st. Any changes? I have a minor one. I will move acceptance of the minutes of March 17th and 21st as amended. All those in favor?
Can we split the vote because I wasn't present for one of the meetings?
Okay, I'll move that we approve the minutes of March 17th as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Abstain.
Selectman Heller?
Abstain.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. I'll move that we approve the minutes of March 21 as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you for the suggestion. And next item is the question of approving and executing an agreement with Mr. Faber regarding the operation of the farmers market. So what's happening with the farmers market? Come on up and tell us about it. This is your opportunity to advertise, market.
You have a long agenda here. I'm here to execute the same agreement that we've executed last year and the year before and the year before. The farmers market is marching onward. We are, as always, like super appreciative of the town's support of the Brookline Farmers.
So the farmers market is when?
The farmers market, the first day this year is June 1st because
Okay.
Thursday falls on June 1st, so that's pretty exciting.
So it's every
to remember.
Thursday from?
And every Thursday from 1:30 p.m. till 6:30 p.m.
Okay.
Until November 16th, because after that you have Thanksgiving and nobody wants to come to a farmer's market on Thanksgiving, and after that it gets very, very cold.
Wow, so you're
And then
going
we
later than you
move
used to.
inside, yeah. That started last year, yeah, and it worked very well. And, yeah, I apologize, I do not have a sexy presentation for you.
That's
That's fine.
Yeah,
I've
we're
got
just thrilled to keep, marching on. to farmers market season.
I have to run downstairs. I love the farmer's market, and I'm in favor of it. I've got to go down to the advisory committee for a minute.
Okay, go. Any questions or comments on the farmer's market?
I have a question about refuse. There's going to be a lot of development in this area, and I'm wondering how trash gets picked up. Is it carted off site by the vendors, or does the town come and do a special run at the end of the market? Do you know?
The DPW drops off 3 nice, like 55-gallon drum sort of trash containers, and they're very nice about it. I mean, they'll take whatever we leave there. I do always, my understanding of the DPW and Julie Piacentini is that, we're allowed to put refuse in them. I always yell at people at the annual meeting, like, don't leave anything except little incidental stuff, take it home with you, because I just don't want stuff falling over the edges. So, I mean, I don't think there's been any sort of issue or problem with it. I also, and it's the same thing with we're right next to the recycling area. So sometimes people start throwing stuff in there, and we make an effort to make sure they understand it's only clean cardboard, flat, the whole thing. We do see quite a few people on farmer market days come with very large vehicles that, offloading cardboard. And I always wonder, like, are people allowed to do that from businesses, to bring large amounts of cardboard from outside? But I don't know. That's a side issue. Okay. So
I think we actually make money off the cardboard.
Oh, okay, good.
It's probably the only thing we make
tell them
money
to just
off.
bring in the cardboard. Yeah, so, and we're very appreciative of everything, the DPW is all over it. They set up our water, the electricity, and the trash, and so
Okay.
I don't think we're creating any issues unless you tell me we are.
Well, I want to commend you on this effort to try and be a little bit nicer about moving people who have a permit for the lot out before the market takes place, so you don't have to tow them. Sort of get a list and give them a call and say, remember, it's Thursday, the farmer's market's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it might not work out that way, because maybe there are privacy concerns about us holding a list, but,
I wondered about that.
whatever the
I did.
town wants us
We're going
to
to
do.
step up and
I would
take
think
that
that,
responsibility.
we would ask people to allow us to waive the privacy thing for the farmer's market. If they want to have the space, they need to know that they might, they're subject to towing, and they don't want that, and we don't want it for them either. So maybe that's something we could do.
Sure.
When I read this, I thought to myself, maybe that's, a way we could go to avoid the issues of privacy, that you or somebody else could be deputized to call them, or somebody needs to notify them.
Yeah, I talked to Abe today about that. We're going to try to work it out. I do feel that it's the town's responsibility. I mean, we permit these parkers, and we permit the farmers market. So really, it's our job to do that. On the other hand, we don't want to tow people.
No,
It's
of course not.
a great idea to not good public relations in any event. So really, we do want people
Does the
to move
permit
out.
say anything about, it does exempt the farmer's market?
Yeah, and then
So-
we give permission to park on-street, I should say, on that day.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll move that we approve and execute the agreement with Abe Faber, the market manager, market treasurer for the operation of the farmers market at the Center Street West parking lot, Thursdays, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. from June 1st, 2017 through November 16th. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Franco.
Aye.
Selectman Heller.
Aye.
Selectman Green.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Faber.
Thank you very much. I think going into something like the 34th or 5th year here, it's pretty nice institution. Thank you for the support of the town.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you, Mel, for, conversations.
You're welcome, Abe.
Okay, the next item is an amendment to the Devotion School HMFH Architects contract in the amount of $89.46 and 56 cents. Mr. Bennett.
Good evening, Dan Bennett, Building Commissioner. This amendment is an amendment to a contract between HMF and the town of Brookline, number 18. This is part of the LEED certification. It's a design review fee, and this bill comes from the United States Green Building Council. They're the agency that will review the design and let us know if it's in keeping with the LEED qualification.
Any questions about this item? I'll move that we approve and execute amendment number 18 to the contract with HMFH Architects in connection with the renovations and additions to the Edward Devotion School in the amount of $89.49 and 56 cents. $8,949.56. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Franco.
Aye.
Selectman Heller.
Aye.
Selectman Green.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. Next item is a contract for the Brookline Avenue Park improvements with Green Acres Landscape in the amount of $906,450, $906,452 and 50 cents. Yeah, Ms. Galantine.
Good evening. Erin Galantine, Director of Parks and Open Space. We are hoping to award and execute a contract with Green Acres Landscape. This is for the renovation of Brookline Avenue Playground. The Park and Recreation Commission completed the design review process. Brookline Avenue Playground is a 4-acre park located in North Brookline. The playground was last renovated in 1994 and is in desperate need of replacement. And the emphasis of this project is to construct an inclusive playground. A playground that's accessible to children and caregivers no matter their age or ability. It's fully accessible via concrete walks, plazas, specialized safety surfacing. The equipment has ramps or at-grade entry and provides multiple levels of and opportunities for play. There are sensory, auditory, physical, imaginative, and environmental elements for group or solitary play as self-directed by the child, and each play area has been designed through this special lens of inclusion. The project also includes an opportunity to rest, top dress, and oversee the athletic field, build a new infield, refurbish the backstop. We're making modest drainage improvements as feasible within a floodplain, and are providing new picnic areas and entry gateways into the park. I'd like to make one correction to the memo in that we're looking to award this full amount for the base bid and alternates 1 through 4 for that total amount. And the project is being funded with town tax dollars, CDBG funds, and in the next item on your agenda, we have a gift as well going towards this project.
Any questions? So when is this going to start?
We hope to start mid-May.
Wow.
I was just going to ask if we've had any prior experience with Green Acres Landscaping and Construction. Have they done any other work for us?
We have. They were the contractor on record for Amory Playground and Athletic Field.
Okay. Selectman Green.
This is looks like a great project. Are any of the other playgrounds in town accessible or exclusive? Inclusive.
Inclusive. So they're all
or
they
have
all
those-
meet ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. They are accessible. Building an inclusive playground really goes further in terms of looking at the tenets of inclusion, a whole host of different types of abilities or disabilities, and trying to sort of blur those lines so it doesn't look or appear like it's a playground that's specifically constructed for children who may have disabilities, but it's really a playground for all. So we meet ADA at other playgrounds, but building an inclusive playground is quite expensive, and we often don't have the means to do it to this extent.
Do we include inclusive equipment on a one time, or not one time, but individual pieces of inclusive equipment at any of our playgrounds?
Yes.
For example, a merry-go-round that it has access to.
So this, and the next item, the gift that we are receiving is a carousel with a sort of zero entry, if you will, point for a wheelchair to be able to get onto that particular piece of equipment. The moving parts are actually below grade, and it is a very specialized piece of equipment. That will be the only piece of equipment like it in Brookline when we're complete with this, when we've completed this. But we have accessible swings, we have accessible structures, we have, in all of our renovations, we've made improvements in circulation through each and every playground. So it is part of the core of what we do is building safe and accessible playgrounds that are multi-generational and serve folks of all ages, all abilities, you're going to see something different with this playground. It's really it'll go beyond.
You mentioned, so this is the playground that is separated by a fence from the field where many people let their dogs run.
Correct.
If I could describe it correctly. So does this money have anything to do with the field? You mentioned something about a field.
Yeah, we are making some modest improvements to the athletic
Okay,
field.
Okay. So I know there are, I think in that field, there are some, what do you call those, soccer goals?
Yes.
Okay, so it will continue to be used for,
It'll continue, I mean, that athletic field is used by football, soccer, flag football, softball. It is a highly used athletic
Right,
field.
right,
So
okay.
after we're done with the construction and have the rest period for the field to grow back in, it'll go back to being permitted for all of those sports.
and I'm assuming the dogs won't be allowed in when there's all this stuff going on.
Not during construction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I will move that we approve and execute the contract for the Brookline Avenue Park improvements with Green Acres Landscape and Construction Company, Inc., in the amount of $906,452.50. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And the next item is the gift of an integrated carousel valued at a little over $46,000 from the Play Brigade nonprofit organization for the Brookline Avenue playground.
So we're really thrilled that they have been able to raise the money for this play component and gift it to the town. It's in the installation of this element is already included in the contract, so the contractor will install the piece of play equipment and it'll be delivered directly to the site. The president of Play Brigade was also very involved in the design development of the playground renovation project.
Cool. Selectman Heller.
Could I ask a question about how, this is not a carousel, this is one of those where the children run around and turn it, or not?
So you can, yes, it can be, you can move it either through a wheel that's in the center, so you can turn that wheel and it spins, or children or adults, which is normally the case, can spin it from outside the footprint of the unit.
So there's no buttons to push
No.
and, you know, mechanisms that the children could get involved with that might be a problem.
No, and it moves quite easily.
But, okay, great.
Selectman Franco.
I want to thank the Play Brigade and Don Oates for their generous donation. I remember Ms. Oates was a dancer at the Rotaries dancing with the Stars event, and it's good to see that her activism and involvement continues beyond that
She's a great
stunning
dancer,
performance.
too.
Yes.
She is. I actually made that connection for her as an opportunity for her to get her, some additional funding for the organization.
Cool. Okay, I'll move that we accept the gift of an inclusive piece of play equipment and integrated carousel valued at $46,068 from the Play Brigade nonprofit organization for the upcoming Brookline Avenue Inclusive Playground Construction Project. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
And the next item, and it's you again, Ms. Scalantine, is accepting a grant in the amount of $10,000 from the Brookline Community Foundation in support of creation of a community garden at Lawton Playground. Where is Lawton Playground?
The Lawton Playground is actually right next to Clear Flower Bakery.
Oh, okay.
Precinct 9, but my neighborhood.
So at Lawton Playground, it's split in two. There's one side that has the playground, little picnic area, and on the other side of the street, there's a basketball court and kind of a passive open lawn area. And a woman from the neighborhood got together with several other folks and said, we would like to reprogram this space. We think it's a great opportunity for a community garden in North Brookline. Lars Anderson is difficult for some to get to, and we'd like to petition the Park and Recreation Commission for this. So we had several public meetings. We actually had a design review process for it, got through that successfully, and they are doing some fundraising. The Brookline Community Foundation has, awarded us this opportunity of a grant for $10,000 to construct it, and we'll be building it with my in-house staff.
Sounds great.
Is it going to be a container garden, or are we going to excavate and bring in clean fill? Is there some need to do additional work beyond this?
So we will continue. They're doing some additional fundraising, but what we are going to do is we have accessible beds that are like container garden. They're lifted up off the ground, and then 3/4 of them are set into the ground with a liner with all fresh certified soil.
What has happened to the rest of the playground that formerly was there?
At Lawton?
Right.
So this is the rest of the playground remains as is. This is a flat open lawn area. And so we'll just be taking a portion of that lawn space and creating this garden area.
Just so you know, I think that Lawton playground, I mean, I'm taking my grandchildren there, it was renovated relatively recently, 5 years ago maybe?
It probably is closer to 10 now,
Oh my God.
but
I'm
yes.
Yeah, okay. But it still seems in decent shape.
Absolutely. Yep, the playground is in good condition.
Yeah.
So most important question, for the vast public viewing audience we have, if somebody wants a plot in the community garden, how do they get one?
That's a great question. So there'll be a lottery, and it will function the same way that the community garden does at Lars Anderson Park. You put your name in through the recreation department. There's a lottery, you're notified, and then there's a community liaison that helps with the rules and regulations around the community garden.
And if they want to enter the lottery, who do they talk to? Do they
They'll call the recreation department at 2069, and we will do some, we'll put together some literature around that once the gardens are prepared. I will add as well that we are constructing a handicap accessible double bed at Lars Anderson Park this spring. So we have the first phase of that complete, and we'll be building those beds, and we have an accessible path going up to it as well. So we will have accessible garden beds at both.
Okay, so I'll move that we accept the grant in the amount of $10,000 from the Brookline Community Foundation in support of the creation of a community garden at Lawton Playground. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Franco.
Aye.
Selectman Heller.
Aye.
Selectman Green. Aye. And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
And next item is an appropriation transfer, $1,650 in the building department. Commissioner Bennett.
Dan Bennett, Building Commissioner. This transfer will cover a shortfall that we have in our education training account, and will help some of the newer inspectors that we have just recently hired, and some tradesmen get a jump on some of their certifications in education training.
Okay, seems pretty routine. Any questions? I'll move that we approve the appropriation transfer in the amount of $1,650 for the building department. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Franco.
Aye.
Selectman Heller.
Aye.
Selectman Green. Aye. Chair votes aye. Thank you. And next item is a question of authorizing the chair to sign a letter of support for the Center Communities of Brookline loan application for the Cone residences at 112 Center Street. Ms. Bullock.
Hi, Virginia Bullock, Senior Housing Planner. We're requesting that the selectmen sign this letter of support, which will go with Hebrew Senior Life's request. They, as you may recall, we came to you in December requesting a subordination of their refinancing of our loan to their refinancing on the 1550 Beacon Street property. This is the second of the properties that they'll be refinancing, which is 112 Center. They hope to use the funds to shore up the exterior of the building. It has a lot of problems, and to make it sort of more energy efficient, et cetera. So we're very supportive of this and hope you would sign this letter of support. Pretty self-explanatory.
Questions from the board? Okay, I'll move that we authorize the chair to sign the letter of support for the Center Communities of Brookline loan application for the Cone residences at 112 Center Street. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
And we have 3 temporary alcohol licenses. I'll move them in omnibus fashion. I've reviewed the applications, and they all look to be in order. And I'll move that we grant a permit to serve alcoholic beverages, sales, all kinds, to the Lars Anderson Auto Museum for a Northeastern dinner formal to be held on Saturday, April 1st from 5:30 to 10 at 15 Newton Street. I'll also move that we grant a permit to serve alcoholic beverage, non-sales, all kinds, to Lars Anderson Auto Museum for a wedding reception to be held on Saturday, April 8th from 5:30 to 11 at 15 Newton Street. And I'll move that we grant the temporary all kinds alcoholic beverage sales license to Pine Manor College for a wedding to be held on August 26, 2017. I guess they're getting in way in advance. From 7 to 11 at 400 Heath Street. All those in favor of the 3 licenses, please say aye. Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And we could take that vote because we have a quorum. Moving on to our main calendar, and the next item is the Poet Laureate.
Good evening. I'm Donna Hollenberg from the Brookline Commission for the Arts. After a thorough review of 3 candidates, the selection committee, in conjunction with the Brookline Commission for the Arts, is recommending Zvi A. Sessling as the next Poet Laureate for a 3-year term extending from April 1st, 2017 through March 31st, 2020. On the recommendation of Jan Schreiber, the current laureate, the BSA would like to extend the term from 2 to 3 years and would welcome the approval of the Board of Selectmen. Zvi Sessling gave us 3 books of his to look at, 2 of which were very well received. And he also has done a lot of community service in the town. He was both a town meeting member and he was also on the Board of Selectmen in the past. And his ideas for being Poet Laureate and what he would bring to the town in terms of poetry, we all thought were really excellent, and I've detailed them in the written report that you got. So I'm asking you now to vote on 2 things. Him for Poet Laureate, and also the extension of the term from 2 to 3 years.
Selectman Green?
The Poet Laureate is, in my opinion, a very important position. And Mr. Sessling looks like, has a great background, a lot of good ideas, etc. I wish you had given us some of his poetry in this package, except for, other than the snippets that you've given, most of which we can't read.
I know.
Going forward, just think about us and what we need to.
Okay. Okay. He had it in books, and that's why.
He didn't give us the books either.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yes. I'll note Mr. Zessling was a selectman when I first moved to town many years ago, and his name was always in the papers. Actually, back then there was more than one paper covering town politics, and he was quite well known in town. And I guess I've been wondering what happened to Mr. Zessling. So now we know.
He's remained active. I know him.
Okay.
And run across him occasionally, so I'm happy to see that he's doing well and going to be the poet laureate for the town.
Yeah. Great. Any questions or comments from the board? So I will move that we appoint the next poet laureate, Zvi. And what was interesting, every time his name appeared in the paper, it would say Zvi, and then it would say, in quotes, Skip Zessling.
I noticed that that's his email address. Yeah.
Appoint Mr. Zessling as the next poet laureate for a 3-year term beginning April 1st, 2017 and expiring on March 31st, 2020. Wow, 2020. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Franco.
Aye.
Selectman Heller.
Aye.
Selectman Green.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, we've noticed 2 public hearings for 7 o'clock. Are they here? So the first one is from National Grid, permission to construct a location for a gas main under the following public way on Stedman Street, from the existing 6-inch gas main northeasterly to Harvard, a distance of about 200 feet to 345 Harvard Street. That's the, I presume, the new construction that's going to be happening over there. Mr. Ditto.
Good evening. I don't see anyone from National Grid, but I think we should move forward with this because it is related to the school, devotion school. It's the new gas feed. So it is an extension.
345, I was thinking, 345 is right around
That's
KI.
the address on Harvard Street.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So this is coming in the backside off of Stedman Street, which requires us to extend the existing line another 200 feet away from Harvard Street. If you look at the project information sheet for this Granite location, it's a pretty benign construction. They're looking to work 6 8-hour days, which is fine. They can do that within the allotted hours. And they circled no on all the other things that might impact the neighborhood, the abutters. So the 7-day notices went out. It's a public hearing.
Okay. Does anyone from the public wish to speak on this? Okay, so it'll be daytime work.
Yeah, they're looking for 7 to 10 days to complete the project.
And no road closures, no changes to on-street parking?
No.
When you say 7 to 10 days, do you mean
Work days,
work days?
yes,
So it's basically 2 work weeks.
yes.
Okay, so,
One other question.
yep.
So this is National Grid. And so I'm always interested in, whether there are gas leaks in this area and whether they know about them and whether they'll be fixing them.
Yes, we didn't identify any hot spots in this section of Stedman Road, Stedman Street.
Okay. So the answer is that there are no leaks that you know of?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll move that we approve the petition of National Grid for permission to construct a location for a gas main under the following public way. Stedman Street, a conduit northeasterly from the existing 6-inch gas main, 250 feet northeasterly of Harvard Street, a distance of approximately 200 feet to, 345 Harvard Street. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And the next item is Comcast's petition to, for a line of conduits, manholes, and cables under Chestnut Hill Avenue from Clinton Road across the MBTA right-of-way to the new hotel at 399 Chestnut Hill Avenue. Mr. Ditto.
Correct. This conduit's to service the new construction at 399 Chestnut Hill Ave, the old Circle Cinema site. And the conduit will run from Clinton Road down Chestnut Hill Ave towards Cleveland Circle, cross underneath the bridge, the MBTA bridge, and then go down to a new manhole, and then from that manhole into the site. No one there from Comcast. Oh, you're great. This looks like it's going to be a benign construction, but come on up and join me. There may be a little bit of night work when they have to hang these pipes from the underside of the bridge, and they have to work during the off hours of the MBTA. I don't know if that's true or not.
It is. Good evening. My name is Dave Llewellyn from Comcast, and yes, we will be working. We currently have the MBTA permit. We're working with getting that signed, and then we will be scheduling the work. It will be night work during non-revenue hours for the MBTA because we're going to have to access the tracks, and the conduit will be installed underneath the existing bridge structure.
Are you going to need a noise waiver for that?
They will.
Okay, so
So this is from 2 to 5 a.m. or something?
The non-revenue hours for the MBTA are probably, yes, correct, probably about 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. We'll have to be off the tracks by 5.
right, yeah.
And is it just hanging the wires underneath the bridge that's going to require the night work, or are you going to actually do trench work in the evenings?
That is going to be
as well?
the plan is to install the fiberglass pipe under the bridge at night. There will be some coordination to tie into the existing, when we bring the underground to the bridge structure there, we're going to have to tie in on both sides of the bridge. So that's probably going to have to be at night, I would say.
That's going to be jackhammering or loud digging or, yes or no?
No part of the normal construction, yes.
Okay.
Well, we'll see you again. And that's when the neighbors will come here and
Yep,
ask you questions.
sure.
What impact do you think there might be on traffic, Mr. Ditto? Is it going to be rerouting, shutting down a lane, or?
Yeah, we're going to have to coordinate this with the work on the site itself, because there's trucks going in and out. But I don't look for any lane closures, maybe just shifting them over, so we may at some point in time have just one lane in each direction.
Well, I assume it's very light traffic between 2 in the morning and 5 in the morning, is that correct?
Yes,
So,
yeah, but that's only for where the bridge is.
I see,
Either side of the bridge is normal daytime construction.
I see, okay.
Hopefully we can get better pavement on this section of Chestnut Hill Avenue as well. It's a slalom course, so to speak, right now.
So are there plans to improve that?
Pardon me?
Are there plans to improve that pavement?
When the total project is complete, there'll be a new surface.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay. This is a public hearing. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this granted location, now is your time, or forever hold your peace. And I see none. Any other questions from the board?
I assume this fiber optic cable is going to be available for use for all of Comcast's suite of services, so not just cable, but it'll be internet access and telephone, should it be required in the future. It'll sort of be a one-stop shop.
To the site, correct.
Okay, so I will move that we grant the petition of Comcast for permission to construct and a location for such a line of conduits and manholes with the necessary cables therein under the following public way: Chestnut Hill Avenue, conduit running southwesterly from pole 7/24 at the intersection of Clinton Road, a distance of 29 feet thence, turning and running northwesterly a distance of 288 feet to the southern border of the MBTA right-of-way, and northwesterly a distance of 31 feet from the northern boundary of the MBTA right to a proposed manhole, and southwesterly a distance of 27 feet from the proposed manhole to 399 Chestnut Hill Avenue. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
And moving along, we have a renewal of a seasonal all kinds alcoholic beverage license as a common vitrular held by the Grill and the Green, doing business as the Vine Right Grill. Lisa Weisel, manager at 1281 West Roxbury Parkway, from April 1, 2017 through January 15th, 2018. Mr. Kleckner?
Yes, just to remind the board, this is an annual renewal. It goes on the spring basis because of its seasonal nature. So we issue a seasonal license to this operation. This is the vendor at the municipal golf course, and by doing so, we can then maximize the number of total licenses that are available to the issue to the town.
Okay, and we don't normally ask the applicant to come, so that's, yeah, okay. Any questions from the board? I'll move that we renew the seasonal all kinds alcoholic beverage license as a common vitrular held by Grill on the Green, doing business as Vine Right Grill, Lisa Weisel, manager, at 1281 West Roxbury Parkway from April 1, 2017 through January 15, 2018. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And next item is the Building Department question of filling a plumbing and gas inspector vacancy.
Dan Bennett, Building Commissioner, requesting authorization to fill the plumbing and gas inspector's position. Tim Lynch has indicated he will be retiring on June 30th after 29 years of service for the town.
Wow.
So I would like to get a early start on trying to fill that position.
Questions from the board?
I'll just say that we're going to miss him. I know you will.
Yes.
And he's always been a very steady and fair inspector, from what I hear, so we wish him well. I know we all do.
I will pass that along to him.
Are there any advanced education requirements for this job? It's not clear from the materials.
I don't have the job description in front of me, but any requirements that are under the Mass Plumbing and Gas Code will be met. Typically, we do want to find an inspector, someone that has some experience as an inspector, and typically they would have a master license for plumbing and a master gas fitting license as well.
Okay. Do people obtain those licenses through an apprenticeship program?
Yes.
Through unions? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Questions from the board, comments? I'll move that we authorize.
Let me just try to figure out what my question is. An apprenticeship program can be very exclusionary. Are we making sure that the people who are in the pool of people to be considered are going to be from a diverse pool? I apologize for the structure of that sentence, but.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. So we'll work with HR in their program in how they advertise and reach out to certain agencies. We will reach out to the trade organizations. Plumbing and gas fitters have associations. We'll reach out to them. With respect to the apprenticeship, that's a program that's done as part of their licensing. It doesn't have anything to do with the inspector or our hiring process. So in order to become a master plumber or a master gas fitter, you have to apprentice under somebody. That's all regulated through the state. That's not anything to do with our hiring process, other than having those licenses.
Okay. I didn't want to step on your question.
No, I finished the question.
Okay, I'll move that we authorize the filling of the plumbing and gas inspector vacancy in the building department. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Bennett. We have noticed a public hearing for 7:30. We're 5 minutes early, and I don't have anything that I can move up. So let's take a break for 5 minutes.
What's your bracket look like now? Yeah, so.
I had some good teams, Kansas.
South Carolina screwed me
That was a lot, so that coach.
He's a good guy.
Yeah. Well, I like South Carolina. I like Robinson too. They're very good team. They lost one of their good players too. Listen, they're the best players. In the Final Four. It's pretty awesome. Did you watch the Kentucky and North Carolina game? It's really awesome.
Yeah, sure. I've watched no basketball.
It's, this must have been upsets, but that was like great basketball. That was really great. It's a small minority of sites. I hope there's a lot of game. I
Okay. Now is a public hearing on the application of ExtendNet Systems to relocate a couple of DAS antenna nodes. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what's happening?
Very good. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Ricardo Souza from Prince Lobel Thai, and here on behalf of the petitioner, ExtendNet Systems. If you recall, back in June of last year, we were before this board to request the placement, grants a location for the placement of 14 new wireless DAS nodes. We had already been operating 4 existing wireless DAS nodes for the last 10 years. We were extending out our wireless DAS network to improve wireless coverage here in the town of Brookline. And as part of that 14 that were approved back in June, 2 of those nodes ran into a couple of issues. And so we decided to go back and find new locations. And so the 2 petitions that are before you tonight are the 2 new locations to replace 2 of the 14 nodes that were approved in June of 2016. The first one is node 202, which is now going to be located at 199 Holland Road, which is just right off of Fisher Ave. Original location was on Fisher Ave. However, the utility company, which has a line of utility poles on Fisher Ave, did not allow us to place our node on Fisher Ave. And so we just went essentially a few feet off of Fisher on Holland Road. And as part of this process, we also worked with Mr. Ditto, Peter Ditto, and as part of your zoning bylaw, one of the requirements is not only to work with the engineering department, but also to present the applications and the petitions to the planning board. We presented our petition, had a public hearing, and we received a favorable recommendation from the planning board to this board. So that was the first one is at 199 Holland Road. That was moved as a result of the utility company asking us to move it. And the second one is node 203, which is going to be located at 5 Seaver Street. Originally, we had approval at approximately 16 Holland Road. But then as part of our construction process, we received some feedback from the property owner, the citizen of Brookline, who really objected to the location of a DAS node in front of his home. Given the visibility from his room, certain rooms in his home, he could see the node, into the node. And so we decided to, as a company, go back, work with the planning board, and also work with Mr. Ditto to find an appropriate location. We went down the hill and found what we think is a good location for the replacement node. And that just utilizes an existing street light where we can install a small extension and install our node antenna at the top.
Okay. Selectman Franken.
I have a question about node 203. I'm looking at image number or sheet number 3 and sheet number 7 for 203. You just mentioned that this would go on an existing street light.
Yes.
Sheet number 3, the right-hand side, which shows the proposed conditions, does not show a Cobra light there. Sheet 7 does for the proposed conditions. So I just want to confirm that we're going to keep the street light there with approval to install the DAS antenna.
Yes, absolutely. We will absolutely keep that as a street light, an operating street light.
Selectman Daley?
I think it's very faint on the photo sim that I have, and I apologize if you can't see it.
Yeah, I see it on sheet 7. I just don't see it on sheet 3.
Very good. I can confirm for the record that the light will be there. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, my question was about the second one. I'm looking at sheet 7 again.
Okay.
And it seems, and that's the one somebody objected because it was in front of their house, but it seems like it's in front of somebody else's house now. And I want to make sure that
there's more of a buffer on this one. If you actually go down the hill, and we thought about this quite a bit. We actually did a site visit there with Mr. Ditto and our contractor to sort of try to figure out at what section of the intersection could we essentially hide the node as best as we possibly can. And it's within a cluster of trees at the bottom of the hill there. And so I think there's a buffer between the node now and that house that's just up the hill.
Okay.
Much more so than the first
was
location.
Was this new homeowner aware that they were now the lucky recipients of the node?
It's been in the paper, advertised, and we did have a public hearing. We didn't receive any objections.
What is the objection to having a node like this seen outside someone's window?
I think it's just the aesthetics of it. I think it's the fact, there is an existing street light there now, and the antenna is fairly small at the top, but rather than just having a pole with a light, there'll be a pole with a light and then also a small antenna at the top and a radio box. And so My sense is that it's aesthetics more than anything else. The abutter who did have an objection to this one at 16 Holland Road, he is here tonight, and I have spoken to him, and I think Ms. Selko has spoken to him as well. I don't want to speak for him, however, but my sense is that it's aesthetics more than anything else.
Okay. This is a public hearing. If anyone wishes to speak on this application, now is your time. Sure. Come on up. Join the party.
Hello, my name is Carlos Hidrojo. I live at 16 Holland Road, and I just wanted to support this process. The existing one at 16 Holland Road is about 25 feet away from the facade of the house, and it's right at the same, since the house is on a hill, it's actually right at the same height as the antenna itself. The other part is that our house has a coverage, our lot has a coverage of about 12.5% FAR. The allowable in that lot is 24 or 25%. So if you built an addition to the top of the house, you would actually be looking above the antenna. And there's been also some research that the antennas are okay when they're below
I'm
the
going to
houses.
caution you here because we are not supposed to take
Exactly.
health concerns into
So
account.
it's mainly an aesthetic, that it's right in front, there's no coverage, we don't have any trees and so forth. We wouldn't be able to put any trees or so forth in front of it. And also the noise that it creates is also, I feel, an aesthetic nuisance. The new location is actually more or less between two lots, and there's a lot of trees, as they said. It's also further away from the actual facades of the houses down there. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on this? Any other questions from the board? Ready for a motion? I'll move that we approve the application of ExtendNet Systems, holder of a license agreement with the town of Brookline to install and operate wireless DAS nodes in the town's public right-of-ways and on utility structures for grants of location approval for 2 relocated DAS nodes consisting of the installation of 1 new utility pole with a DAS node antenna, fiber optic cabling, and ancillary equipment at or around 16 Holland Road, and the installation of a 4-foot extension to an existing utility pole, a DAS node antenna, a fiber optic cabling, and ancillary equipment at or about 5 Seaver Street pursuant to Section 409(4)(c) of the zoning bylaws. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Of the town of Brookline. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley.
Aye.
Selectman Franco.
Aye.
Selectman Heller.
Aye.
Selectman Green.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. Have a good night.
Now, I'll note that on the hearings on the financial plan and the warrant articles where we don't have to do a newspaper notice suggesting that we put on our calendar the word approximately, which gives us license to start a little early, so the public is on notice that we might start just approximately at 7:45, and right now it's 7:43, and I do believe that comes within the term approximately.
I think that's close enough, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So now we're on to budget reviews. The first one up is the building department. Commissioner Bennett. Mr. Simmons.
Thank you. I have Charlie along. He could talk more specifically about public buildings. I'll do an overview of the building department in general. Thank you for giving the opportunity to discuss our proposed budget. I want to thank Mel and his staff for all the effort they've put in helping us get to this point. As you know, the building department is comprised of 3 divisions. There's the building, code enforcement and inspections, capital improvement and construction, and then public buildings. Each of these divisions are additionally supported by administrative staff. The budget this year is effectively a level funded budget. It's increased by a little over 1%, in the area of $99,000. The increases are related to personnel costs for steps, union obligations, longevity. Services are typically increased annually by 2.5% for the repair and maintenance, and some utilities have gone up as well. Our budget also included some capital requests, vehicles, and other equipment that we need to service the public buildings. During the past year, the building department has accomplished many things. For the first time in quite a while, I'm not sure how long, Charlie, we had some tradesman positions that were funded approximately 2 years ago that we're having trouble filling. We did work with the HR department to increase those salaries, and we were able to get all those positions filled. So as of today, we're working with a full complement on Charlie's side. On the building inspector side, we did have an inspector that was out on injury, and he has since resigned. We have filled that position, so we've got a full complement of building inspectors and tradesmen, and we're hoping that that will help us move along and move forward in a lot of our endeavors. This year, the building department processed and issued more than 2,500 permits. We continue with our over-the-counter permitting system, or permitting process, which is more of a customer service-related thing that certain permits, windows, doors, replacement siding, other very quick turnaround, we'll do them at the time that the person is at the counter instead of giving them a 1, 2, or 3 day waiting period. This has been very well received by a lot of the contractors and homeowners, the siding companies, and roofers. We continue to do electronic management of our permits and applications. We do scan them all in and file them electronically. We continue to work with IT in trying to do document storage. That is moving a little slower than I'd like, but IT does have a lot of other irons in the fire, so we are working with them to get this moving a little faster. But we've got 2 or 3 projects that has really done well with some of our historical data, and we're happy with that. We continue to do training and for our inspectors and tradesmen, and in the next month or so, we are looking at rolling out the Acela permitting program. This has been about a year in the making. It's a whole new permitting program that our staff has worked with the IT staff in developing all the behind-the-scenes data and documents, workflow, things that are needed in order to get the public to able to file these things online, get our inspectors to able to understand the process. This will have the handheld capability so that we can input the inspections, we can do complaints kind of on-site right at the time we're there. It will be a much more efficient process than currently the inspectors, go out, they write it down, they come back, they input it into the system. So I think this will open up more time for permit plan review and other enforcement issues on behalf of the town. We have many large construction projects that have been around town. The BU Theater is foundations in, steel's up, they're working on the exterior skin. Cleveland Circle Cinema, that foundation is done. They're on roughing in or rough framing, I think, the 3rd or 4th story over there. We have Brookline Place, all the demo work is done. They're working on the foundation for the parking garage. The hotel at 111 Boylston Street has been completed. And the Devotion School, which is another large project for the town, that's major foundation work is completed, and the structural steel is almost done, but not quite. They're moving forward. With respect to some of the performance indicators that we have in our budget, in the book, online permits did go up a bit. Under GEO, I am expecting when the Acela program rolls out that we'll have a much better and more user-friendly program, that the online permits will rise significantly. The the credit card payments, that's pretty much leveled off. I think as many people are going to do credit cards, they're done, and so we still take checks, the credit card, and there's a few guys that don't part with their cash, and they will pay in that way as well. That's pretty much it for a quick overview. If Charlie, one other thing, we did complete 2 years. Last year we got a final report from the Matrix. We got the Matrix report, which is a final report of a review of the Public Buildings Division. Last year they set out a number of recommendations in draft form. We did begin to implement a number of those recommendations, and there was the ability to create one tradesman position, and we were able to fill that. This year, I think the budget constraints were much tighter. We weren't able to do as much as we wanted to, and we do look forward to working with Mel and his staff in the future and trying to implement more of those recommendations. That's pretty much it right now for me. Charlie wants to give some more detail on public buildings.
Dan pretty much covered everything. I'll just add that my major concern right now is the preventative maintenance budget, which is part of the repair and maintenance. And I've been working closely with the schools and on the town side. And my long-term goal is to try and increase that along with additional staff per the Matrix report, as Dan had mentioned. Especially with the schools, the increase of the square footage of the buildings, and my concern is to be able to maintain those buildings as they come online. And so I'm hopeful that we can work through that over the next several years. One side note is energy conservation. We, over the last year, we did very well. We got approximately $30,000 back between the electric company and the gas company. And we've been working with the planning department, getting green communities money, which is approximately $120,000. In addition, in the CIP, monies are funded for next fiscal year for energy conservation and energy management systems, basically the computers that run all the buildings. So I will continue with that. A lot of great things have been happening, mostly with LED lighting. We put in new LED lighting at the Elliott, at the Driscoll School, and the Pierce School. And again, they last about 10 years, very bright, clean light. And we just signed a proposal for the town hall. So the prices are coming down, performance is going up. Great, great product. We also have been putting in condensing boilers, and we've also been putting in what are called variable frequency drives, which makes pumps and motors slow down when they're not needed as much. Very simple up, very, very quick to do. Payback is about 6 months. So
Wow.
it's a great program, and we're plugging away on those as fast as we can. So.
I just have to say to you, Charlie, that I continue to be so impressed with how well Webster Street is working for the Lower Devotion School. And I know you had a lot to do with that project, and it's really, I did not expect a kind of high-rise building to work so well for these young children, but they seem to love it, and it's working fine, and so good job there.
It was actually Joe Conley and I that worked together on it, and we envisioned, I said, maybe if we could take down a few of these walls, we could create a classroom, and that's how it started. And they like it. They like it a lot, and
Yeah.
it's working out well. And Devotion will be on time, and they'll be moving back into a new school, so.
Well, and I want to say to the commissioner on that, I have been working with Tony Quigley on the Devotion School, working with Ray on the Ninth School, and these guys really give it 110% and working very hard on those projects. So it's much appreciated on my part.
Thank you. I did want to just mention, I did forget to mention the 2 feasibility studies that Ray has been working very hard on and has dedicated and put a lot of time in for the high school and for the ninth school. So thank you for that comment.
Now, I noticed in fiscal 16, there was a big jump in building permits. So is that continuing now?
Yes, we're not on that same path, but, we're still early, in the year. The spring and summer, we'll see how those numbers reflect. But, yeah, that's when I mentioned 2,500, we're over, I think, 26-something. And our fees kind of go along with that, so that's a good thing for the general fund. But, yeah, no, we're happy, and with the full staff, we're able to keep up and process that.
Now, I know, too, that it says in the performance indicators, percent of permit applications available online, 28%. Does that mean 28% of the applications are being applied for by...
So 28% of the total permit. So right now, we allow the plumbing, gas, electrical, mechanical, and sprinkler are all online.
Okay.
So if you tally up all of those, 28% of them apply for.
You may want to change the label.
Yeah.
The way it reads is like it's the permit is available online, and I was wondering why only 28%? Because I know you can go in and you can see everything online.
Right, and I'm hoping with the Acela program that we'll get more people to apply online, and it'll open up, I think, the ability for me to run some better reports to kind of show some of this information better than the GEO. I wasn't here to set up the GEO TMS, our current permitting system, but the new one, we've broken out in different work categories and permits that we should be able to track this a lot better.
And then credit card transactions. Credit cards, of course, come with 3 or 4% fees. Is there a dollar limit on permits accepted by credit cards? So if someone comes in with a $50,000 permit fee on a new house, would you allow that to be paid by credit card?
We'll take whatever the credit company allows by the user. So we've had some amounts in the 6, 7, 8, maybe as high as 10,000. I think there were a few where we put them in and the fee was too high and it was declined. So the contractor took out 2 credit cards and paid one with 5 and one with 6 or 7, and it does go through and
right. And you just gave them a nice trip to wherever.
Possibly, exactly. Yeah.
We, I mean, that just again emphasizes how we need to be putting these transaction fees on the users and not absorbing them.
That is our intent.
Yeah. When is that going to happen?
We want to hire the finance director before
Oh.
we do that. That's a big implementation project, and we just
Okay.
can't take that on without that position.
Okay.
Yes. Selectman Heller?
So this is an impression, and I'm going to ask you for your impression, and, you may not be able to, you may not have an answer, which is okay, but I've noticed that in the past number of years, probably since the downturn in 2008-9, that construction costs seem to have gone way out of sight and, quadrupled over the last 20 years, maybe. And I'm wondering whether you see that I'm thinking about Charlie's budget and the expenses that he manages in the maintenance of our buildings. Are those kinds of contracts also had that kind of increase?
Well, I think it's fair to say that when everything blew up at that time, from what I saw, we had a decrease in labor costs. Material costs still rose up. And what I've been seeing over the last 2 years is a great increase in my costs for the trades. And we've been really close on some projects. We've actually put a project out again twice. We put it out in the winter, and we still got high prices. And it's just demand. There's just not enough tradesmen around. That combined with a overall increase on materials, which always keep going up, yeah, it's getting more expensive.
I will say, though, we got very good, bids on
Devotion.
Runkle and Devotion.
Yeah.
So, there was a dip for a while.
We did.
and-
That was
and we
great.
did get good prices on those buildings.
With respect to permitting and construction, permit fees and the estimated costs, the contractors aren't always truthful with what they tell us because they're going to get the permit fee based on that. So depending upon the job, the inspectors know we get a final cost affidavit. So we might not get it up front, but at the end we get an affidavit with some additional costs to make up for whatever they may or may not be telling us in the front end.
So, and you can adjust the fee? You can adjust
Yeah, we get an additional fee,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
And Brookline is a very desirable market, so people, they're going to bid on it. If people keep paying, then they're going to keep bidding, those costs. So there is, I think Brookline is a premium, and there's probably a bit of a markup in this specific community and others that you end up paying because of that.
Okay, any other questions for Commissioner Bennett? Mr. Simmons? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Allison Steinfeld, Planning Director. You have before you an essentially level-funded budget, for which I am certainly appreciative. I would also like at this time to publicly acknowledge and thank the Planning Department staff. They've really been quite extraordinary, both in terms of their effort and commitment. And as a result, we've had a rather successful year that I'm proud of. Some of our more notable accomplishments include our ongoing work with the building department. I think we've worked well together. We've strengthened our relationship, and we work together to apply the land use regulations and bylaws in the town. That involves, of course, providing staff support to the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Preservation Commission, and the Neighborhood Conservation District Commission. And our work also involves working with the public, and that includes guiding them through the process, which sometimes can be rather onerous and frightening even. But I think staff is particularly good at working with the public. Obviously, we've been inundated with 40Bs. During the past year, we've dealt with probably 10 40Bs in various levels at various stages of the process. I will tell you it's a very frustrating process. It's frustrating for the ZBA, for the neighbors, and for the planning department. But I think despite that frustration and despite the really onerous guidelines established by 40B, I think we've worked together to improve each and every one of the projects to varying degrees, but the projects are better having been approved than when they first applied. And I think we owe the staff a debt of gratitude on that, but also the ZBA. They've worked very hard. And we will continue to try to take these 40Bs and make the best possible project that we can for the neighborhood and for the town. We have, our preservation staff has successfully applied for a $20,000 grant from Mass Historic to undertake and update the survey for the greater Aspinwall Hill. We continue to work with the Climate Action Committee on a number of initiatives, including the vulnerability assessment, which is focused on protecting our local resources from climate action. With your support and the support of town meeting, we expanded our economic development division. It is now the Economic Development and Long-Term Planning Division. We hired a new planner to fill that role, and really that's provided us with a number of opportunities to expand our proactive approach to planning, and we will continue to do that. The staff in economic development and long-term planning completed a needs assessment, working with every department in the town. That needs assessment is the foundation of our strategic asset plan and ultimately the major parcel study. That should be going out to bid within weeks.
Right, yeah.
Staff worked very closely with the task force, the Citizens Committee created by the Board of Selectmen and chaired by Selectman Franco, to create the Emerald Island Special Zoning District, which of course is very exciting, and we hope to duplicate that planning process for other projects as they come forward. We continue to administer about a $1.6 million in federal funds through the Community Development Block Grant and home programs. We, as always, support your policy and that of the town to create and maintain affordable housing for low and moderate income people. And with DPW, they're no longer here, but with their active involvement, we continue to spearhead the Gateway East project through the state's TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program process. We're hoping that very soon we'll be able to announce that MassDOT is undertaking the 25% design public hearing next month. It's been a long process, and we're hoping to get through that so we can start more work and hopefully eventually get to 100%. It seems like every year I'm telling you that, but I think in April we'll actually have the public hearing. We're going to continue most of this work through FY18, as well as undertake some new initiatives. We've begun working with the Coolidge Corner Task Force that's focused on redeveloping both the Waldo Durgan parcel and the Holiday Inn parcel. I finally learned not to call it the 1200, but I will. We're continue to be engaged in the planning processes for the 9th school and the expansion of Brookline High School. We will be undertaking the strategic asset plan. That has, the Economic Development Long-Term Planning Division has been working closely with the Planning Board, because without their support, we felt that the strategic asset plan would neither be implementable nor implemented. But we do have the support of the Planning Board, so we feel very comfortable finally moving forward. I think in FY18 you may see an expansion of the Hubway stations in Brookline. That's looking encouraging. And we'll continue to work with any number of initiatives to expand housing opportunities, but certainly with JCHE. ZBA just issued their comprehensive permit to construct 62 units in Coolidge Corner next to KI, and obviously the board has supported the expenditure of $2.5 million. So we will work with JCHE to make that a reality. Up to, I'm sorry. We have been very clear with that. So yes, up to, plus staff commitment as well. So thank you very much. Certainly glad to entertain any questions.
I know I've been spending a lot of time in the planning department and with Ms. Steinfeld and her staff, and I look at, as you were talking, I was kind of jotting down all the stuff I personally have been involved with your staff, starting with Hancock Village, and that involvement is continuing, which hopefully is going to lead up to a town meeting warrant article or a series of warrant articles, the timing of which we were hoping for the spring. I don't know if that's going to happen at this point, but timing of which is to be determined, but that's moving ahead. And of course the school decision, building up to a school decision on the 9th school, and that was it happened in October. It seems like so long ago. And of course all the 40Bs, and then my little pet project, Hubway, and as Ms. Steinfeld said, it looks like we will be expanding Hubway in Brookline. Probably not for this riding season, but after this riding season, there's a new contract in place with the operator, and we could be getting as many as 9 new stations, and that's big, because with 9 new stations, we could really cover the town with a nice, ideally spaced network of stations. Then, of course, the Waldo Durgan and Coolidge Corner projects, and it's just the amount of stuff that's happening in town.
We haven't even mentioned all the climate action programs, which I will report to you in more depth next week, because this week we deferred our meeting because due to Climate Week to next Monday night. So we will have some definite updates for you next week. But I've worked closely with especially Maria. She's been exceptionally diligent. I mean, we have aggregation, we have EV charging, we have electric vehicle charging, which, as you know, town meeting asked us to look into. We will report to town meeting in May. We have a net zero for the ninth school subcommittee. There's the vulnerability issue. So there's a lot of things going on. I mentioned community aggregation, I hope, 'cause that's a big one. So there's a lot going on, and Marie has been excellent. And I want to thank you and your staff. I know other people have pitched in. I'm also working on the JFK 100, so Evan Lair is involved, Kara Bruton is involved. So, you know, she's so it's been, it's clearly a very, very important department of the town, and there are very, very good people working in it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I am hoping that President Trump is just as successful getting his budget through as he was with healthcare. But one of his proposals is to cut out CDBG money. And I know that Mr. Viola, at least part of his salary is paid with CDBG, and I believe there's the CDBG coordinator, her position, I believe, is also, Awana, is also paid with CDBG money. And are any of the housing people?
Both housing people are paid through with block grant funds.
Yeah, so...
and we also have a vacant position at this point that we haven't filled yet that is fully funded with block grant.
Yeah, so I'm very concerned about not only the projects that and one of them was we are recommending some funding, significant funding for the Jewish community housing for the elderly project, but I'm very concerned about the projects, but also about what this would do to your department. And I imagine you are thinking about that a little bit.
But we don't like thinking about it because we know it would essentially eliminate the community planning division unless the town saw in its to fund at least part of it. But it would seriously undermine our efforts to support housing. As well as obviously 15% of the block grant budget goes to social services. So there's services throughout the town that would be affected. Steps to Success, et cetera.
Yeah.
Housing Authority.
Brookline Community Mental Health is a big recipient, yeah. And the Housing Authority, as you mentioned, is we try to help them to do, they don't get enough state and federal money to do their upkeep even, and that's, you know, we've been trying to help them. So it is kind of a horrifying thought. Any planning going on, or you're just got your fingers crossed?
Well, you know, the budget's not out yet, although we have heard and seen enough to realize it's not only CDBG, but I believe home is slated for elimination. So I was having a discussion with Selectman Franco, and you know, clearly we're going to have to be prepared to talk about that as the budget unfolds, and we will. I think it's as drastic as Allison said. I mean, without any additional funding, you know, these are supporting key positions in our planning function, and without them, without the federal funding, I don't have any good solutions.
Selectman Franco.
I want to join the chorus of congratulations and applause for you, your department, and your staff. I undertook a major effort to do a rezoning or reimagining of a small district in Brookline that I think came out successfully, and there's no doubt in my mind that it would not have been as successful at town meeting. The outcome would not have been as positive for the community without the support that your staff provided, in particular, Andy Martineau. So kudos to him. I thanked him a lot, but it doesn't ever get old congratulating and applauding people. So we've talked a lot about 40Bs in this room over the past 18 months. And what I take from the rush to 40B applications is that this is a desirable community and people want to ultimately live here. They want to build projects so people can live here because they can get top dollar, and it's an easy marketing effort for them. I'm wondering if you're seeing any effort on any uptick on interest on the 40A side of things. If people are coming in without 40B plans, but sort of saying, hey, I just bought this piece of property, what can I do with it, and engaging in a sort of a visioning exercise with the support of town government. Has there been an uptick in those types of conversations, or are we sort of not focused on that quite yet?
I don't think there's an uptick, but if there's any interest ever indicated, we grab hold of it and sit down. We just sat down with a group of business owners yesterday, property owners, just to discuss some possibilities for rethinking the potential of their properties with help from the town in terms of rezoning. If I may, there are a lot of reasons, I think, for the uptick in 40Bs, certainly the economy itself, our location, and the fact that we are certainly a desirable place in which to invest. But also our zoning's tough and not always reasonable. And 40B has provided an alternative than having to deal with our existing zoning. Emerald Island's a case in point. I mean, clearly the reason that that's going to be successful is because the town was willing to put aside the existing zoning and think creatively and outside the box. And I think more and more the town will have to do that to encourage and define appropriate development.
So, I mean, I've said publicly before that I think we, as a town, as a community, need to take a hard look at the zoning bylaw. This is sort of a question out of left field, so I don't expect you to respond right now. But in theory, do you think that to address sort of the concerns that you just articulated, the need to do an in-depth dive into a particular area, are better addressed through tweaking the zoning bylaw at large, or possibly adopting, I should say, the Boston model of a planned development area, or the ability to do a little bit more of a, more easily do an overlay over the zoning bylaw?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't suggest adopting models from any other community. I think we have to look to Brookline and look to what Brookline needs. And in terms of zoning, there's a lot that it needs. Our existing zoning, and I know the building commissioner, as zoning enforcement agent of the town, can attest to this, is extraordinarily convoluted, confusing, difficult to understand, and even more difficult to administer. Part of it's because our zoning is developed over time reactively, and there are internal inconsistencies. So I think we have to recodify the zoning in and of itself, but then focus on specific areas of town that warrant redefining. And certain zones, for example, my staff is always complaining about the T-zone and the L-zone. The L-zone we discussed just yesterday on Harvard Street. But we have to come to terms with what is acceptable development, what we actually want to promote. In terms of overlay versus changing the existing zoning, the whole issue of nonconformity comes up, and that's tough. So in some ways, I think, in general, probably overlay makes more sense than total rezoning.
I think, Mr. Kleckner, don't we have some money in the CIP for, I believe, not the upcoming fiscal year, but the year after that, for somebody to, for us to hire a consultant to help with this process of redoing the zoning bylaw?
It is in the CIP, but I defer to Melissa to tell us exactly where and how much.
In fiscal 19, I think it's about $250,000. And I think the first phase would be to kind of clean up the language in the existing zoning bylaw as kind of a first step of what I assume would be a multi-step process. So
I think maybe at the time we were doing the comp plan, so this is like 10, 11, 12 years ago, there was a thought, okay, first we'll do the comp plan, then we'll start doing, attacking the zoning bylaw, using the comp plan as kind of the philosophical foundation. That never, we did the comp plan, but we never did the zoning bylaw piece. But yeah, from what I've seen, the zoning, it seems that at every town meeting there's another amendment that just gets kind of layers on, and each of the amendments have a purpose, and most of them are good, and they're addressing a particular problem, but over time it just layers on top of each other, and our zoning bylaws probably a lot of spaghetti. I kind of equated, reading our zoning bylaw is very similar to reading the Internal Revenue Code.
It's not too flattering.
I should also note that zoning came in after Brookline was largely developed, so we have this constant issue of nonconformity. I mean, a lot of Brookline was built before cars. There weren't garages. So it's sort of a difficult thing to deal with. We didn't start zoning and then create a town. We had a town and then we imposed zoning on it. So it's always going to be complicated.
So I hear what you're saying about the pre-existing non-conforming issue. I mean, I've got to think about this a little bit more, and this is how I get in trouble, speaking half-baked thoughts. But, when I did the River Road effort with 16 other people, we were flat out for 8 months. And I'm not sure that this community can sustain that level of detailed effort for individual projects as they're advanced. I think that's a lot to ask of everybody. And if we can set some more predictability about what we may allow, what we may find acceptable in a given district or a given part of town, and do the pre-planning work, it may help us in the long run. But again, this is not an easy issue, and I can argue both sides of the equation pretty easily. So,
one issue that's kind of come up perennially that I haven't heard too much about this year is the workload on the preservation staff as we've added historic districts and neighborhood conservation districts. And I know there's been turnover in the preservation staff, and I know now we're fully staffed. We have some really good, experienced preservation planners. So has the workload there kind of settled down, and how are we doing?
We do, in fact, have 2 extraordinarily capable preservation planners, whom I stole from Boston. And they're very effective, very efficient, getting a lot of work done. But I don't think they can take on much more work. If there's interest in more LHDs, it may push them to the point that they really, some of their work's going to suffer. I do want to start being a bit more proactive when it comes to preservation. The planners and I want to start developing a preservation plan, basically a 5-year plan for some of the activities that we want to undertake, areas that we want to focus on, archiving, as the building commissioner indicated. There are lots of things we want to do. We don't have the staff to do it. So obviously, at some point, I would like additional staff. I will ask for additional staff, but I understand, obviously, that there are limited resources. But they're very efficient, very excited about preserving Brookline, very knowledgeable, and they just got a grant, as I indicated. So there's a lot more we want to do, and we really can't at this point. That's an honest answer.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your support. I appreciate it.
Next one up, Human Resources. And you can bundle in the benefits.
Before I start, one of the things I'm going to mention is our work with departments, and I have to say, Sandra DeBow, HR. And I have to say that working with Allison before she leaves, when a new department head comes in and when they have the daunting task that she did to really, get everybody moving in the same direction, we worked very closely with Allison to reorganize her department a little bit, to get new good people in with her, and it really has worked out well, and I'm happy that you guys are doing so well. So I never see her anymore. So HR is at a really good place right now. and I hope it's just going to continue to get better. We had some staff turnover and some a payroll conversion that we've been struggling with in the last couple of years, and that's sort of behind us. We're fully staffed. I have Leslie Noble here with me tonight. We have an awesome staff. They are really all very hard workers, willing to take on any task we give them, and they're all moving forward in their HR careers, which is really nice because we give them a very interesting workplace to work in. So what we've been doing this year is continuing to work with departments, as I mentioned with Allison, and when she was new and she had ideas that wanted to be implement. We're doing a very similar thing with library right now. I'm working very closely with the library director to make some changes that she thinks are necessary to improve efficiencies, and to do it in as constructive a way as we can with the unions by our side. And we're doing a couple of department head searches, as you all know, and we're continuing to look at succession planning and how we can catch up a little bit on that as our department head workforce continues to age, and we're going to have to be replacing a couple other important departments in the next couple of years. We've been working with unions. We settled almost all of the contracts this year. I'm happy to say that we have put extra attention in dealing and improving labor relations with AFSCME in particular, and some of our other unions, and it's been really successful. We've seen it at the HR board. Our HR board hears our grievances and as well as matters that are going to unfair labor practices, and those actions have really gone down, and I think that we are able to work much more collaboratively with them in the last year or so. Having finished bargaining with most of our unions, we have just a couple bargaining units left. Police, they are getting new labor counsel. I don't know if they've officially announced it, but I think we know who their new counsel is, and we'll probably be getting back to the table soon with them. We settled school traffic supervisors. Today they're going to be ratifying, or not, but we hope ratifying on April 7th. So if all goes well, we'll be bringing that to you soon, and hopefully that will be going to town meeting. We're also continue to bargain we're at mediation with Teamsters. So that's what we have left.
We heard from them tonight.
I heard, you heard. They're a small group. There are dispatchers. They're very important to the work that we do here in the town, and we've assured them that we want to continue to work to try to get an agreement. One of the things that we have been able to do, and you've seen a little bit of this so far, but we really need to get our policies, many of our policies up to speed. The social media policy we brought before you, you had some comments. We've tweaked it. We took it back to the HR board. The HR board approved it. The revisions that we made, we'll be bringing that back to you again. The EEO policy, we worked with the Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations Subcommittee on that. We just did a drug-free workplace one. We felt we had a drug-free workplace one kind of on the books, but we felt like we really need to fine-tune it and try to address legal marijuana and how that's going to impact the workplace, and to put really clear rules around that. And so that's one of the things that you're going to be seeing. But the other thing that we're going to be looking at is our FMLA policy /ADA, and to really put a workable document together for our department heads. The ones who have larger employee groups and that we work with regularly, they kind of have it down, but every once in a while there'll be a smaller department that we really have to hold their hand. And I think that if we give them a little bit more tools, that they will not struggle as much when it comes to an issue that they have to deal with in the workplace. We continue also to have an excellent relationship with New England Baptist and their OC Health. They really do really good case management with us. We're able to make sure employees, when they go out on a workers' comp or 111F claim, that they are getting the treatment that they need, that they are able to get appointments faster than we can, that the cost for the workers' comp, we have another party that negotiates those rates for us. And so we've continued to keep our workers' comp fairly even, given the rising cost of health care. New England Baptist continues to tell us that we're a model that they use with other municipalities, and we really see great success with them. Open enrollment is coming April 5th. We're going to have our wellness fair on May 6th. This is an opportunity for employees to come and hear about the different products. It's also a time when we can talk to them about our health reimbursement accounts, the FSA, other things that they can do to keep their out-of-pocket costs down and to help manage their health care costs. Am I forgetting anything? Let's see. We do a lot. It's fun, and we have a really good staff right now, so it's exciting to come to work every day. Oh, my work, I'm sorry. My work on our work with diversity and inclusion, we continue to work closely with Lloyd as they get a focus at the diversity, inclusion, and community relations, the DICR, I call them. Once we really get to our stride, I think that they have a lot of ideas that we're going to work together on. So that's exciting as well.
Selectman Daley.
Yeah, I noticed on your accomplishments, and it also shows up in your performance workload indicators, that you said utilized effective claims management and specialized legal support to keep unemployment costs at or below the previous fiscal year. So what did you actually do there to?
Which number is that?
That's number 10 on the accomplishments.
I think that means that our workers' comp, unemployment ebbs and flows with the economy, as you know. And we have fought back in some instances where we believe that unemployment isn't deserved, and that's not always an easy thing to do. We had 2 instances that will be going to arbitration where we had 2 employees who did some things that we didn't think, we thought were so egregious that they shouldn't get unemployment, and we fought it, and we won, and those costs would have been pretty high. But anything else to add to that?
I think it's just working really closely. Leslie Noble, Assistant Director of HR. We're just working really closely with our third-party administrator. As you know, we are a reimbursable employer, so we pay all of our workers' unemployment claims directly. But we do have a third-party administrator, and we do utilize them to examine our claims, to direct link our information to the state, and to really just keep a close eye on everything that's going on so that we're reporting in a timely manner and making sure that we are litigating those claims that probably we should litigate. So, thank you.
And your workers' comp costs are down a bit too. Is that your connection with the Baptist?
In part, but I'll have Leslie speak to that because she really manages that on a day-to-day basis.
So we've talked a little bit about this in past years, but we have this sort of 3-pronged approach that we use for our injury on duty, which is police and fire, and for our workers' comp. And what we do is we have the administrative piece, and that's our office working to examine the injuries that we have, to prevent injuries, to make sure that we're tracking and reporting appropriately. We have the medical piece, which Sandra just talked about a little bit. We have an on-site occupational health nurse who is actually an employee of the New England Baptist, and she really does our triage and case management. So what she's doing is making sure that when there's an injury, we're making sure that that employee gets immediate treatment in the appropriate manner, in the appropriate place. She's making sure that she stays in contact with that employee on a regular basis, weekly, if not, bi-weekly, depending on what their treatment plan is, making sure that the appointments are made for them. If they can't get an appointment, we get one right away. And all of this really hinges on being able to partner with the Baptist as we have, because they are, as you know, specialists in a lot of the things that we deal with, sprains, strains, orthopedic injuries. We can get people into specialists really quickly, get them excellent care, and they treat a lot of our walk-ins. So that's very quick treatment. People are not going to an emergency room and waiting 6 to 12 hours for an appointment. And we're also getting immediate medical feedback on those people, so we know if we can safely return them to work. It's a really good model, and as Sandra said, the Baptist often tells other people that they're working with, other municipalities or other organizations, how we do this model because it works so well.
Great. Bernard?
Yeah, a couple of things. Item 5, training of police officers, including workplace bannering with Dr. Gerald Cox. I mentioned Dr. Cox because his report on the environment in the police department was incredibly good. I read a lot of reports that are not incredibly good. This was really excellent. But could you give me a sense of, how do you train police officers in this? And do you go off-site, or is it something that's done in-house? And the reason why I ask is that, you hear a lot about training for, diversity issues, and many times the training is really kind of a joke. So I'm always curious as to, what you do to make sure that, the training really is effective, basically.
So the training is on-site in that it's in the community room. I mean, the police department has training capacity, so we do it on-site. This is a very specialized training that we trained for a particular need that we saw at the police department. And and so,
I think you're going to have to caution everyone to turn their cell phones off.
So, yeah, even if you turn your cell phone off and you move it the right way, Siri still speaks to you. That happened to me once recently.
The NSA coming through her.
Right. So, Dr. Cox. Dr. Cox had a model that he wanted to use about bantering. I mean, because in public safety and other parts of the town, bantering has a really important social aspects in the workplace. It brings people together, it relieves stress, it furthers teamwork. There are a lot of things that we talk about, or he talks about in the training, about why bantering is good. And then we go through some very specific exercises with the group at a time. It's usually about 12 to 15 people. They break up into little groups, and they talk about how they themselves have been affected. Usually it's around the middle school years, about how they stuck out and how something happened to them personally that really was kind of funny, but not so funny at all. And it had, from what I understand from the person who's head of the training and the chief himself, is that it was really well regarded. And I think that people really did walk away a lot from with a better understanding of where you draw the line. What was also pretty amazing is that they knew where the line was, and we found in various groups that we talked to that they would say, yeah, if you cross the line, I'm going to come over there and say, hey, you crossed the line. So it was really interesting. I feel like I learned something. Dr. Cox certainly learned something, and the police officers did as well. I do my policy training, which is based on the MCAD training model, on our policy itself, and then he goes into the bantering, which is really more one-on-one interactive. It has been so successful that we are going to train DPW next. That's also another group of people who work very closely together in teams, that they often will, joke around and kid around with one another, and we're going to roll out this same thing. We're trying to figure out when is the best time right now. So I think it's been highly successful, actually.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I mean, bantering, or whatever you call it, I remember from my youth, was a way of
Yep.
bringing group cohesion, or whatever, however you say it,
Mhm.
and seeing if kids are tough enough to hang with you.
Exactly.
Basically. So I think that's very, very important, and I applaud you for that. It also looks like you're doing some training on the civil service process and helping, it looks like, going out and getting people to understand the process so that we're expanding the pool of people who have the potential for going through the civil service process and becoming police and fire personnel. I mean, is that what you're talking about?
That is not what we're talking about
Okay.
in that. Are you looking at number 9?
Yes.
So they've changed, but we do that. But that
We'll
is.
talk about that then.
Yeah, that's specifically about new software and new procedures that they're doing. They've put a lot more on us, and it's been a lot of training and a lot of work. But we work with police and fire, but police does a fabulous job in reaching out and trying to recruit and reaching out to people that they believe would be good, from a diverse groups of people who would be good police officers, and really bringing them in the fold as to what the civil service process is. We knew you when you were at the high school, you went to college, you came back, you don't live here anymore. We think you'd be a great police officer. Get an apartment with somebody, establish your residency, take the exam, and so on. They just did a great recruitment video. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to see that. Just absolutely great. And I think it's reflected in the classes that we're putting forward. I mean, we can only hire off the list, right? So we have to do tons of work in advance to get those people to take the exam so that they are on the eligible list. So I think they're doing police in particular is doing a fabulous job. We continue to work with fire. They're doing a good job as well. And the new fire chief hopefully will be a partner at this.
But the only thing I have to say, or the last thing I have to say, is that I wish more people in our community knew this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole lot of misinformation out there with respect to training, the effectiveness of training, whether it's relevant, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's some way that, what I think are successes in implementing these types of training can be gotten out to the residents of the town, it'd be great.
Yes.
Selectman Franco.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
The first one is, I know that we're going to acquire an applicant tracking,
Yes.
piece of applicant tracking
Yes.
software. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So we did a request for proposals. Is that what it was officially? It was under a certain amount of money, but we looked at 4 different companies, and we found one that we really liked. We liked it because the other 2 models were based on schools or other non-Massachusetts, New England government settings. This one was elegant in its simplicity, I like to say. It was very simple. It did exactly what we needed to do. The people who have the company are geeks, and as they're self-proclaimed geeks, and they know what they can do and what they can't do, and how they can add to the existing platforms that are out there. So, for example, what's exciting about that is they have already moved into onboarding. So not only are we going to be doing applicant tracking, and so we'll have analytics on that, but they're also doing onboarding so we can get them right into the payroll system. And then they have other things coming down the road, which we are not prepared to buy yet, but for performance management and some other things that will really enhance the payroll system that we have now to be a little bit more strategic from an HR perspective. So we're excited about it. I believe we're meeting Thursday or Friday to roll out and talk about a plan of implementing it. My hope is that we would have it up and running by the summer.
So this is going to allow us to collect, maybe not collect additional information, but manipulate and have a better comprehensive view of who's applying for jobs in Brookline, who works in Brookline.
That's
and
correct.
Target as appropriate to make improvements as we see fit.
Yes, and it will also, it will help us facilitate our recruitment efforts a little bit better too. Right now, we use certain online things. We go to the manual. I think it's going to push it out a little bit better too. So yeah, we're excited.
So my second question is about a line item, an appropriation that represents 11% of the town's budget. And that's group health insurance. A nearly, $31 million expenditure. So I found particularly interesting the workload indicators around what types of plans employees are going into. And some of those plans are more expensive for the town, for lack of a better way to put it. And there's a lot of education that's to take place around health insurance selection. You know, the most expensive plan doesn't always provide the best benefits for a particular employee. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about maybe a component of that wellness day on May 6th that you talked about education and consulting around what's the right fit for people, and with the goal of twofold goal of getting people into the right plan for them and their families, but also getting the expenditure, the cost for the town to provide that health insurance down.
Right. So we try to explain the different types of plans as best we can, and at the health fair, that's absolutely, and when people come to the counter, that's absolutely what we explain to them. I am a member of an HMO, a subscriber to an HMO for my family. I always say, I love it. I have an HMO, but I've never had any problem getting health care. Yes, I have to call for a referral, but it's no big deal. So I certainly, if somebody's interested, use myself as an example. We have to be very careful about telling people which plans to take. There was a move a couple of years ago for people to go to Unicare or Unicare. There was a certain group, I think it was maybe even a union, who was telling all their members, you got to go, you got to go. So they were flipping to this, and then they found some of them it wasn't a good fit. Their doctors weren't covered, their medications weren't covered, and then when they wanted to go back to Harvard Pilgrim, it had been closed, and so they couldn't. So we have to be very careful about that. We encourage people, but we give them a guideline. This is what you should be looking at. If you have special needs, if you have special medical needs, if you have special prescriptions, you absolutely want to figure out if those things are covered. But we absolutely talk to them about what is the benefit of a PPO versus an HMO. The GIC is doing some of that work for us because they're closing some of the plans, which they feel are not being as efficient as they could be. And so if people unenroll and switch, they can't necessarily get back on. But it is something that we try to work on. We also have an opt-out that we talk about with people, that if they have other options to go someplace else, there is this ability to opt out.
So it looks as if the PPO plans have taken a dramatic downward percentage of people who are enrolled. Is that correct? Is that because of the GIC, something the GIC is doing about those plans? It seems like the shift is towards the POS. I assume that's public service plan.
I think the POS effectively replaced the PPO plan.
Right. I think the GIC got rid of the PPO and changed it with a POS.
Okay. But it seems that the preponderance of people, other than retirees, were probably almost 50% of the pool. Is that right?
The retirees?
Yeah.
It's a large percentage. Is it more than 50? About 50.
Here it says 49.2, 48.9, you know, so the numbers are pretty near 50.
Okay.
So, you know, it seems that that half of what we're experiencing in terms of cost is probably around the retirees. Is that correct?
The experience that we have is with regard to retirees?
Well, our budget, we have a budget of group health.
Yes.
And I would say, it looks to me as if almost half of it should be expended on retirees. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing that number, but if it's about 42% or 50%, yes, then that's who the subscribers are.
Plans because there's Medicare usually that's covering the basics.
So it's not a percentage of the
Right,
budget then? It's
right.
just
And
a
the other
percentage
thing
of
you'll
the
find is
budget.
that when there's a retiree and they're eligible for Medicare, the spouse and the two spouses have two separate plans, so they start to multiply, if you will. That's why the numbers, I think, look a little off. Retirees.
Yes.
But it seems fewer people are choosing the HMO.
I think that's generally the case, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Kleckner.
I wanted to mention two things in this budget. This budget, the overall town budget and schools are very limited, but in this department, you're seeing some increases. One is $100,000 for legal expenses, and I know you know that we had to go for a reserve fund transfer this year for a lot of the litigation issues that we're facing. We are looking at ways to deal with those better, more efficiently, but the bottom line is we need to cover those costs, and so we decided to bite the bullet and put the $100,000 into next year's budget. The other thing is the management, I should say the department head pay schedule. There's $25,000 in this budget under the professional services to look at that plan. You know that's an area where we're most interested in increasing our diversity, and we want to make sure that the plan that we have, which classifies employees within the department head, is accurate. It doesn't discriminate against people from minority backgrounds or gender, which is a big issue. And so this is one of those plans that we feel is important to take a look at next year. So I put money in the budget for that, and it's one of the very few what I would call investments in the budget.
Any other questions for Ms. DeVoe? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Were we supposed to do benefits as well?
You want to do benefits? Talk about benefits? Or
We can.
We kind of did, or no? You want to?
We talked about group health, but
Yeah, we kind of skirted around it. Yeah, if there are any questions. I'm good.
It's on page
Yeah.
127,
Right.
127. So, I mean, group health insurance really is the main
Yep.
item. We continue to have, an EAP, and we talk a little bit about workers' comp. We've made some changes in our budget to workers' comp to just deal with the fact that we had a little bit of a spike. It kind of leveled off. So it's being level funded. Our EAP continues to be helpful. Injured on duty also was reduced a little bit for the same reason as workers' comp. And unemployment was reduced because we've seen a leveling off due to the economy.
I think the story of the benefits is in addition to health insurance, the pensions, you'll see over 9% increase in the pension funding schedule. That has a lot to do with the performance of the market and our own decision to reduce the rate of return assumption that then, increases the the pension funding schedule, and we're trying to continue to reach our pension funding liability in, I believe, by 2030. So we have not extended that, even though we're able to, and that's why you see the increase. So that's creating more pressure, but that's one of the fundamental things in this budget that we're dealing with.
Mr. Tucker, I just want, I mean, that is a big piece of, you know, it's a big increase and a big piece of the budget. And I wondered if you know about how other towns are doing in this regard. Are they also trying to hit the target of 2030?
Some are pushing it off. I think those that can take advantage, you know, can try to swallow the increase are trying to do that. Good question. I don't know exactly where people are at. I mean, you can look and see where people are at one point in time, but, you know, how they got there and whether they decided to change the year for which to finish their pension funding. I'm thinking some did, Nancy, but I don't know the full number.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Town clerk? Yeah. Mr. Ward, Town Clerk's office. So what's happening in your office?
Trying to think of things to say. Thank you for the opportunity to present my budget today, which will take you all, probably all of like 2 minutes to do. It is a level funded budget like many departments, but I wanted to thank the town administrator and his staff for assisting us in doing that. I know times are difficult, and it's nice to have a level funded budget. The only difference between this budget and last year's budget is that we're currently funding one election as opposed to 3 elections as we did last fiscal year. And with that, I'd also like to thank, take the opportunity to thank a number of departments and my office staff for the work that we've done, work that they've done during the fall and winter of this year. You know, handling early voting for the first rollout, you know, and handling the presidential election. Various staffs are involved. I mean, the DPW, police, fire, library, building, schools, housing authority. And then some private entities like Wheelock College and Young Israel Temple for allowing us to use their facilities. And just wanted to thank them and my office staff for just doing a great job and making a difficult time not so difficult. So we're happy with that. But beyond that, I'm really, there's not much else to say other than I'd just be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
From your perspective, how did the early voting go, and what lessons can you take from it?
The lessons are is we're top heavy on personnel, you know, in performing those services. We wound up being, I think, out of the top 10 communities in the Commonwealth, we were number 7 in terms of unfunded mandated costs. And the reason why that was is because we made a decision, or at least I made a decision, and the advisory committee saw to support it, was that we put our best foot forward, that we have alternate sites, that we extend to weekends and evenings, and have as much access points to early voting that we can provide. And it made all the difference in the world. I mean, we had approximately 12,000 voters early voting. That was number 1 as far as towns go in the state, but yet we were number 7 in terms of basically unmandated costs.
What was the percentage of voters early, roughly? That's 12 out of...
12 out of 29, I'll let you figure that.
Okay. So did that make things easier on election day?
It made things spectacularly easier on election day. I mean, there were longer lines some moments on early voting than there was on election day. So I think overall it helped a lot. What I noticed the most, though, about early voting, and it didn't, you know, when you think about it, you know, there were only approximately 900 additional voters this presidential election than the previous presidential election. So, and how much early voting was a part of that? I don't know. I mean, I would gather to think that it wasn't much because the election was probably more important to drive people out. But what I noticed particularly, though, and I think it's important to, that it not be lost in, that it not be lost in the argument, is that it was a tremendous opportunity for our seniors and our disabled to use at their convenience. I mean, that's what I noticed immediately, and it was a real treat. So, but it was expensive, and it is something that I would certainly have to consider again at the next biennial state election, because I do think we want to put our best foot forward, but maybe perhaps not at that cost, maybe not to the extent that we did it the first time rolling it out. But I do think that weekends and evenings are important, but perhaps not alternative sites. And then the real key issue, then the real top-heavy part in terms of personnel was the requirement that early voting ballots be placed in envelopes, not to be able to be voted at that time. That was part of the statute, and there's a lot of reasons why that occurred. But that required a lot of people at the end of the week to process them on election day. I mean, I particularly spent, along with 4 teams of 6 people, 14 hours in room 103 downstairs, which we use as our central tabulation facility, straight, all day long, processing ballots.
Just opening the envelope?
Just opening them, checking their names off.
Machine.
No, checking their names off, doing it by precinct, checking their names off, processing the ballots, counting any hand counts or, invalid ballots, just so we would do it at the polling location. And we did that for a solid 14 hours before we finished.
Wow.
So it's a lot of work, and it could be done better, but it would require legislative efforts.
So it's the state elections that...
It's every biennial state election, so every state election in November.
So I know a topic of discussion at the advisory committee was the funding of the of an override election. I suspect this group will have less of an issue of putting that in the budget, since.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask. Is that when this budget accounts for 2 elections, so that includes our town election and an override
Correct,
election?
that's what we proposed. The advisory committee did not approve that.
Yes, well, that's okay.
As of yet, although I don't believe they reallocated the money, so I'm guessing they're prepared for...
Their recommendation was $80,000 less, which was the amount that I gave them approximately for an additional election, although it's probably it should be a little bit more. But I gave them $80,000, and that's what they held back from.
They've been wrong before.
Well, I think, we don't know yet the date that we would do an election. I'm not suggesting we remove it from the budget. I think we need to reserve it and have it in the budget and be ready to go whenever the project is ready to go, whenever that may be. But that's me.
I agree. I think that we've had in the past, I've talked to you about this, we've had in the past debt exclusion override votes that were not on the May ballot. They were in December, both of them. December 4th of 1990 was the Lincoln vote, and December 12th of 1995 was the debt exclusion for the high school. And in both of those cases, we had substantial turnout. It was excellent, actually, compared to, if you look at the amount of turnout in May elections, I think it's pretty comparable. So I would say, that means that the democratic process is working. And the question is, again, the cost. Just as we have to evaluate the cost on early voting, I think it's a convenience to people. But this is a necessity for the projects in terms of keeping them on track and on time. And the cost of that is the cost of putting on the election. So it may cost us more to delay, actually. It's hard to quantify, but so I think we need to do it on a time frame that makes sense and not necessarily wait for a May election on the grounds that people are going to Florida or for the winter or whatever, because clearly that they were doing that in 1990, 1995, and it didn't seem to hurt the turnout at all. So obviously, people can still vote absentee, correct?
Oh, sure, yeah, everything's applicable.
So I think there's still a mechanism for people to do that.
Selectman Franco?
I have two questions, not about elections. One of the pleasures, I imagine, of your job is to serve as the Secretary of Town Meeting. And we had a very large warrant last year, and that large warrant put some pressure on this board, it put some pressure on the advisory committee, if only because we had to devote some extra time and some nights to doing warrant article hearings, which I think is great. I agree with civic participation. I'm wondering if there was any impact on your office with having such a large warrant.
Only on the amount of paper I generated for the constable to post the warrant, the postal warrant and the articles approved by the Attorney General, who's sitting right there. It was a lot of paper, and it wouldn't be your normal thumbtack kind of posting. It was pretty dramatic. It isn't the first time it's ever occurred, but it certainly hasn't been this way in a while, and it was a challenge just dealing with the volume, in terms of paper and process, let alone what the reviews that the Board of Selectmen and Advisory Committee had to do, but just the administrative part of it, it was a little bit of a challenge, but not as much as you had.
My second question has to do with the public records law. The state revised the public records law and put some, I believe, some additional responsibilities on your shoulder. I'm wondering if you can just talk for a second about what the impact was on your day-to-day operations and whether you think you have the resources to fulfill your now obligations under state law.
I think a proper assessment still has to be taken. We're not quite there yet. I mean, what we've done is, in order to be in compliance as of January 1, I've been the de facto record access officer. But what it does require, it requires a lot of serious consideration over protocols and whether who should be record access officers departmentally, and that has. A piece of that is that it's a human resources piece because it's changing the description of people's job descriptions. So that's an issue too. But we're working our way through there. I mean, we're discovering all the little pitfalls within a department. Say within one large department, you could have the request funnel through several different areas of that department before it gets to the right person. And I think ultimately, my particular opinion on the matter would be is that you have one record access officer for that department who's responsible for producing the public records requests. We're not there yet, but I think that we're getting to see the benefit of that, and we're getting to see what needs to be done. And whether that requires extra resources or not, it may, but I don't know. And that'll be determined hopefully by human resources and town council. But let me just add though, while we're doing that, we are fulfilling the commitment of the new law.
Changing the topic a little bit to polling places. So in the past recent year, we've had a change from devotion to the synagogue on Green Street, and I'm wondering from your perspective how that's gone.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, everything they promised us and they've showed me the diagrams, we're happy. We're looking forward for it to opening up and becoming the old bowling place again. And then Tony Grigley and the school department and any of the expansions or changes they do in any of the schools, we ask them to consider it for use for a polling location, simply because we're only 6.5 square miles. We don't have an awful lot of polling locations available to us, and yet we have 16 precincts. So unless people want to congregate at one auditorium, let's say half the town, it's good to basically plan ahead. And Tony Grigley, Ray Manzarek, it was Manzik, and Mazik, and I'm thinking of a Doors drummer. But in any event, that and the school department have been a big help in planning going forward in planning for areas that we can use as a polling location.
Any other questions for Mr. Ward? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to warrant articles, and these are public hearings. So first one up is Mr. Gordon, Article 11, Campaign Finance. Why don't you tell us what's going on here?
Thank you. So this will take 3 to 4 minutes. I'll tell you what's going on. As you know, I'm Neil Gordon, town meeting member from Precinct 1, member of the advisory committee. I'm a Brookline constable. I did the posting that the town clerk just referred to with a thick warrant. I'm subject, as you are, to the Massachusetts campaign finance law. I'm also, as many of you know, the go-to guy in Brookline when it comes to campaign finance reporting. I serve as treasurer for 3 campaign finance committees. For Selectmen Franco, Green, and Wyszynski, I served as treasurer for the Vote Yes for Brookline Ballot Question Committee and routinely receive campaign finance questions from reluctant treasurers working with new candidates for townwide office. I didn't realize it was actually a gate to some people considering to run for office, but it is. I speak today as the primary petitioner for warrant article 11, a bylaw change that would expand campaign finance reporting on the one hand and streamline it on the other. So a bit of background. Under Massachusetts law, candidates for townwide office in Brookline and elsewhere are required to file periodic campaign finance reports. Simply stated, it's a report of money raised and money spent. The required state reports are filed with the town clerk 8 days before an election, 30 days after, and at year end. For selectmen candidates, though, this being Brookline, our bylaws already go further than the state requires and require a special Brookline campaign finance report 15 days before an election, a week earlier than the state report. Brookline's bylaws also require a bit more detail than the state does, and that added detail requires a Brookline report to be filed alongside the state report 3 more times each year, 8 days before an election, 30 days after, and at year end. So it sounds like a lot of reporting. It's 7 reports in total in an election year, and it is. It's a lot of reports. But transparency is a good thing, and warrant article 11 seeks more campaign finance transparency in the town. Favorable action on this warrant article would expand to all candidates for townwide office and to ballot question committees. For example, an override question, and the committee of proponents or opponents of that question. The early reporting requirement, 15 days before an election rather than the current 8. It would bring the early reporting to the same standard as currently exists for the Board of Selectmen. That's an important week. That week provides to the opposition and to voters important information early enough to allow them to respond, perhaps with a mailing of campaign material or with a letter to the tab. So quickly, here are some of the weeds of the state versus town reporting for Selectmen right now. Expenses of $50 or less are combined on a single line item for both the state and the town reports, so that's totally redundant. Expenses in excess of $50 disclosed for both state and town reports, so that's redundant. Contributions of $50 or less combined on a single line for both the state and the town report, so that's redundant. Above $50, both the state and the town require naming the donor, so that's redundant. Remember, there's seven reports here, and so far half of them are redundant. Here's the substantive difference between state and town reporting. On the state report, an donor's occupation and employer are disclosed, over $200. For the town report, that disclosure is triggered at over $100. That's it. Over 200 or over 100 per donor per year is the difference in the reporting threshold, and that triggers all the redundant reporting. For that marginal disclosure, occupation and employer for donors between $100 and $200, subject parties, currently the selectmen, are required to file 3 mostly redundant additional reports, 8 days before an election, 30 days after, and at year end. And as you all know, if you win, that redundant reporting stays with you and your campaign finance treasurer for 3 years. I know firsthand the extra effort of this parallel reporting, including the work of the town clerk, where these reports are filed, and the limited value that we and the voters get in return. Warrant Article 11 asks for timely disclosure from all townwide candidates and ballot question committees 1 week sooner than required by the state. But at the same time, the warrant article proposes aligning disclosure thresholds to the state amount and eliminating reporting that would be further complicated by the additions. I think that's a fair trade.
Questions from board members? Selectman Daley?
Yeah, you've also put in ballot question committees, though, right?
That's correct.
That's not mentioned in state law.
Ballot question committees are required to file campaign finance reports under the state law.
Oh, I see. Okay.
This has them filing with the town also a week earlier than
Right.
the state.
So to be clear, all of the campaign finance committees and candidates that are listed in the bylaw as revised are currently required to file under state law. The only addition would be the requirement to file a Brookline campaign finance report a week sooner than the state report, 15 days instead of 8.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Does anyone from the public wish to speak on this warrant article? I see none. Any discussion from the board?
It sounds reasonable.
Yeah, it sounds pretty straightforward. Do we want to think about it, or do we just want to?
Well, I want to ask one question.
Sure, go for it.
And it's just a process question, really. Why do you want, or why are the deadlines different? I know in my case, my treasurer ends up filing the state report sooner because she's doing them at the same time. And so, but the state, the municipal ones seem to have to be filed earlier.
Right. The municipal report is required 15 days before the election. The state report is required 8 days before the election. So in the practical case of a contested election, where you would prefer that your opponent not know who's funding your campaign, you would wait until the last day and file 8 days before. The town meeting previously thought it was good practice for the selectmen to disclose that information 1 week earlier because it allows for a reaction and response time. I think that expanding that to other presumably competitive campaigns makes sense. The expansion under the current rules would require 2 reports to be filed on each of 30 days, actually 8 days before, 30 days after, and at year end. It's not just the treasurer. That report goes to the town clerk, it needs to be reviewed. In some cases, they need to be chased down. They need to be scanned, they need to go on the website. So there's a bit of workload there. Aligning the triggering thresholds for the additional disclosure, which is marginal at best, eliminates the redundant reporting. In addition, it's not much of an effect in a non-election year for public officials required to file. But it's a bit troublesome for the treasurer because the cutoff of 8 days prior and 15 days prior for the town report versus the state report creates 2 different accounting periods. Right. It's not a nightmare. It's just something that we sort of don't have to do while we're trying to help candidates go their campaigns.
My treasurer's trying to make them, trying to make sure that the information is reflected, and it's not always the case that it can be, but.
Right. Sometimes it is. If you get a donation and it's not unusual to have spending during that particular week. This would provide one additional report. There'd be no separate Brookline report otherwise, and the accounting periods would just flow from one state report to the next.
I have a question about the, what I will term the elusive Committee on Campaigns, which is in this bylaw. The only active member that I ever have run across was the recently departed Frank Farlow. Are you aware of any activity? Have you received an inquiry from the Committee on Campaigns?
I've received no inquiry from the Committee of Campaigns. I will tell you that, as will not surprise this Board of Selectmen, Frank Farlow dutifully called me following every election. He received, because he asked, campaign finance reports from the Selectmen, and invariably would ask me for additional detail and recategorization on spending in particular, because advertising, he'd like to break that down. I don't know if he reported it to the committee or not. I'm not aware of any other activity by the committee. I do know that Marty Rosenthal was involved with Frank in putting the original bylaw in place. I've had conversations with him. I won't speak for him. I presume if he had any objection, he knows about the hearing.
Well, I know that Frank didn't single you out. He did call my treasurer as well, and, you know, we went over the information he wanted and provided it. So.
I'll make a motion for favorable action.
Up, it's a public hearing. Go.
Because you're the one who can answer it. I didn't fully understand, Regina Frawley from Precinct 16. Is this new proposal to raise the limit for identifying what people do for a living to $200 if it's a town report, number one? And if not, if people give below that, does that mean we may not know their names and/or might we not know their profession at any point, never mind 8 days or 15 days? If it's for transparency, I'd like to know the answer to that.
Yeah, it's...
All right, I'm happy to answer it. If we change the bylaw, only with respect to selectmen candidates, the disclosure of names will not change. Names, addresses, and amounts for any contribution in excess of $50 will still be disclosed by individual name. The profession and employer will not be required to be disclosed from the $100 to the $200 threshold. That information would no longer be disclosed.
Could you say why, the reasoning behind that?
The reasoning behind that is two things. Number one, I filed the warrant article because I believe that competitive races other than the Board of Selectmen should be subject to the same standard of early reporting, 1 week early, which I think is valuable. That puts particular reporting burdens on the candidates and to some extent on the town clerk's office. I'll tell you that as a campaign finance treasurer for 3 selectmen and for the override campaign committee, the S campaign, many contributions came in above the threshold requiring employer and occupation data. Invariably, some of that information is missing. I found all of it through a Google search, invariably in minutes. I think it's worth the trade.
I'm sorry, I really didn't know your last point. I'm looking for, your statement was that this is good to be transparent and we're Brookline and we do things better sometimes, and then it looks like we're actually reducing the accountability and the transparency by going to...
But we're requiring more offices to file the extra reports.
Yes, but it still doesn't tell you, I think we all know that it does matter what people do for a living. There have been races that I will not state publicly here, where there was the classic violation where members of a particular company gave what the original person wanted to give, but in fact they ended up saying, well, okay, we'll do it by breaking it down into the $100 or $200 per person. It's irrelevant as to what the name of that company is that I know of. What does matter is that why change something where we can go online and see if there is an issue. Once you raise it to 200, it could be cleverly $199. I just don't see why we need to do that on that one component of your proposal. And just because we're increasing it to the campaigns, even though that's state required of certain committees, that isn't a really quid pro quo to justify less transparency. And
Information requested. So perhaps between the lines of your question, you can accept a campaign contribution within the legal limits without getting the information as to employer and occupation. You have to ask for it, but you don't have to return the contribution if you don't get it.
Right.
Selectman Franco, you look puzzled.
So one of the provisions of the state campaign finance reporting is the submission of a Schedule E, which is the acquisition or disposal of assets which will last more than 3 years. I didn't hear you make mention of that requirement being paralleled in the Brookline reporting, and I just want to make sure I understand if it is or is not going to be part of the Brookline filing requirements.
To the extent it was required previously in the bylaw, it made no change to that provision in the bylaw.
Do you want to think about it, or do you want to vote?
My treasurer's been out of town. I'd like just to ask her what she thinks of it.
Okay.
Before I, because she's better at this stuff than I am, and
Okay,
so
that's fine.
I'd just like her opinion.
Okay.
And
So we're not going to vote tonight.
It's been done by a resident expert, basically. Maybe there are other things that she has concerns about.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gordon. Article 3, compensating balances. We've seen this one before.
Yes, good evening. This is an annual an annual filing that allows the treasurer to make arrangements with banks to carry a certain balance in their account in exchange for them waiving banking service fees. It's state law that we get annual authorization from town meeting.
I think we've only used it once in my memory, but we don't usually use it.
In a low-interest
Yeah, we've
environment,
used it the
we're
last
more likely
couple of
to use
years,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, we have been using it lately.
Yeah. Any questions on this one? This is a pretty routine one. This is a public hearing. If anyone from the public wishes to speak on this. Do we want to vote it?
Yeah, I'll move favorable action.
So moved. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Unpaid bills, do we have any?
I'm happy to report there are none.
So, should I?
No action.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Anyone from the? Okay. I'll move favorable action. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Wait a minute. You're moving
mean
favorable
no
action? You
A
want to move-
recommendation for favorable, oh, for no action.
No action.
Oh,
Okay.
It's late, we understand.
right. So the motion is no action. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Now, Article 7 is a new one, which came out of the Municipal Modernization Act.
Yes. So this allows us to treat the bond premium that we receive when we go out for bonds in a different manner. Currently, the way that we just went out last week, we got a bond premium of around $2.7 million. So what normally would happen is that would fall to free cash at the end of the fiscal year and then be kind of used in the allocation in the capital plan and other free cash allocations. What this allows us to do is basically use the bond premium to reduce our overall costs for the projects in the same manner that debt exclusion bond premiums are currently applied to the projects.
Is this going to impact in any significant way our use of free cash?
In the manner that it would basically reduce the overall level of free cash, so in the flow of free cash, it would reduce what's available for the reserve fund, but there's a requirement that free cash hits the reserve fund first. The liability fund is the second order of that priority. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund, that would probably be the fund that would have the most impact because there would be less available to allocate.
That's a pretty significant impact.
If
I mean, given that we use the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, presumably, and we will in the future for affordable housing needs.
I would say that if there is a desire to increase the level of appropriation to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, I think that's something that probably should be an alteration of the existing policy related to free cash.
Or would we just appropriate more money into the pot of unappropriated funds, thereby increasing free cash at a later year? It doesn't necessarily mean that the pot of free cash has to decrease.
The bond premium also varies year to year. I mean, last year was a little over $1 million, so it really is dependent on the size of your issuance as well.
I want to say the Article 7 in our book isn't, unless my book is different than everyone else's book. So, yeah, the real article.
It's really Article 8.
It's Article 8. Article 8.
Okay, I was wondering why I didn't.
Yeah, I was looking for it.
I think the original order, when we were putting the warrant together, I think it was originally supposed to be 7, but then we changed the
So
order.
correct the minutes, Kate, to reflect that we're talking about Article 8.
It's a public hearing.
Oh, it's a public hearing? Oh. Selectman Heller?
Well, yeah, I'm worried about what this will do to the CIP.
This will actually help the CIP because essentially as your debt goes down, it increases the availability of revenue finance CIP. So your debt service costs will go down because you're applying it directly to your borrowing costs.
Okay, so will borrowing go down as a result?
It should, yep.
But is the debt service that is reduced, it's not equal to the amount that is lost from free cash, though?
No, because
So, I mean-
free cash has to go through the buckets of the priorities of the reserve fund, the liability fund, the CIP, and then any other one-time funds like affordable housing and any other liabilities that we want to address. This year, we put free cash to additional money for pensions and OPEBs as well.
But I'm saying is that the debt service in, 1 year of the first year of the bond issue is going to be much lower than the amount that free cash is losing in that year.
I'm not sure if they're going to be, if it would be spread over the term of the bond or if it would be applied in the first year. I think that's something that we still need more guidance from Department of Revenue about how the mechanics of this would actually work.
Yeah, well, am I incorrect? I mean, the way I'm reading this, it authorizes us to do that. It doesn't mandate that we do
Yeah, the
that.
words are may be applied
So
rather than.
we still can contemplate on a specific borrowing if we want to do that. This just would authorize us to do it. It would give town meeting approval that could be how you handle that money.
I think this suggests that the premium applied to the payment of the costs may be applied to pay project costs, and the amount authorized to be borrowed shall be reduced by the premium so applied. So basically, what you're saying is we are going to be borrowing less, so therefore our costs will be less. Is that correct? If you're borrowing less, your costs will be
We'll
less.
appropriate the net amount. This is no different than how it's done currently for debt exclusion projects, and I would suggest our next two big projects are going to be debt exclusion projects. So probably won't make much of a difference.
So just think, we just issued $36 million in bonds and got a $2.6 or $7 million bond premium. So being that happened prior to this vote, that money is going to go to,
It's going to get booked as general revenue, and then will fall to free cash at the end of the
okay,
fiscal
and
year.
then if we were to do this transaction next year, we would have the option of taking that $2.7 million and
Applying it to the overall cost of the issuance.
Reducing the issuance to 35 or whatever.
So this
So,
applies,
34, no,
yeah. This applies to all types of bonds, not just general obligation bonds?
I believe so. This language came from First Southwest, our financial advisor.
We should verify, Melissa, whether it's optional.
Sure.
If it is, I don't see what's wrong with doing it, because then we retain the option of, if we don't think it applies in with a certain bond issue, we could let it go to free cash.
Well, I will just note, we're about to do a lot of
Capital projects.
capital projects, and reducing the cost of our borrowing is probably a good thing, reducing the burden we're placing on taxpayers at a time when we're doing a lot of projects. To me, it sounds good.
And this is already a requirement for debt exclusion issuances.
okay, so do we want to vote it?
Well, I think that Mel is saying we
We
should
need more
have a little
information
more
from
information.
Okay, then we will
We can
not
put
vote
it
it.
back on.
And then we have one more warrant article, and this one I hope is easy.
So I brought with me the warrant that was printed in the paper from last town meeting, so you can see how tiny the font is. This was a really large warrant.
Show how many pages it
It
went
took up
for.
7 pages in the paper.
And how much did it
It
cost?
cost over $6,000. And considering how tiny the font is, how much staff time it takes to proof this with the newspaper, going back and forth, editing, we felt that it might be more efficient to just publish the index of the warrant in the paper, and still post the warrant in the places that we normally do. We have a constable post it in 10 public available places. We have copies available in the Selectmen's office for anyone to pick up. We post it online. We blast out notices to the town meeting listserv, the What's New Brookline listserv. So we feel like it's still readily available and accessible in a lot of places, and that maybe we can manage our advertising costs a little bit better. The index also provides more of a description about the intent of the article as well, so that might be more helpful for someone that's trying to figure out what's going on.
In larger print.
Yes.
I think the requirement to publish the whole thing in the newspaper is a requirement out of a bygone era.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think that anybody...
read that?
No, I don't think anybody can read that unless they have their magnifying
If they
glass.
could, it's not as useful as the summary.
Right.
If you want to know what bylaw you're interested in, then
it's hard to figure out by just looking at some of these zoning ones, what they're actually, what the intent really is.
Yeah.
Right, and then as we go further in the vetting process, the combined reports are listed, are on the website along with the warrant article to give people even more information, so.
And it's for people who aren't elected town meeting members or engaged in town government, there's other ways to learn about what town meeting is going to be taking up. I mean, the tab routinely publishes articles about the sort of most controversial or impactful articles. So unlike other legal notices like, a will going to probate or foreclosure, there are other avenues which people can become informed rather than sitting there and scanning court dockets.
How will this affect our costs?
So I would assume that they would go down pretty substantially. The index for this town meeting is only 2 pages long. This past warrant was over 100 pages, so trying to get that into a 7-page newspaper was pretty...
A few $100s compared to a few $1,000s.
I would assume something like that.
Now, in years where the warrant is not as long as it was last time, what is the cost of publishing?
So I've looked at a couple of years past, and it varies, obviously, depending on if it's a zoning year, there might be a little bit more. 1,400 is kind of a number that I saw for a couple of town meetings. But I'm still compiling some more historical information on that as well.
The reason why I ask is that, this is a, source of revenue for newspapers, and newspapers are under a lot of pressure not to publish, and we're losing a critical source of information in this country. I'm not sure that that's relevant to us, but it's just something that we should be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know what other towns are doing? Are they also moving away from printing the entire warrant?
So this is a local requirement. I haven't done any research to see what other communities require in terms of warrant posting.
The problem is, I see what you're saying, and I still take the paper newspaper, because I figure somebody's got to, do it, but...
But do you get your warrant?
I actually read my news more online. So I think this is the case where it's almost impossible to read that print. So we're publishing it to adhere to a local requirement, but does that make it really available to people? I don't really think so.
Well, is there any kind of, would there be an option to increase the font size?
Well, I mean...
So that it could be readable if it's instead of 100
Well, then you'd have
and
more
something
pages, though,
Yeah,
so
that would
you'd
be
get
more
significantly more expensive.
Well, not, I mean...
This warrant was $6,000. So
Right.
we're getting to the point where we would need to increase the appropriation for town meeting if we were to continue this way.
No, but I'm saying if we just publishing the index.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would assume that
the
we want to make it
the
as
index could be more readable.
legible as we could.
Yeah.
It could be
But I
2
still
pages,
Still being cognizant that we
whatever.
wouldn't want to be excessive, absolutely.
It did, I forget whether it said this, but, I think there should be most of us now get a lot of information online, but there should be an option if people want to call up and say, this looked interesting, I want to see more, for you to send out.
Yeah, but anybody can do that now. They just,
Yeah.
do we need to put it in the bylaw?
No. But do you? If somebody called up and said, I want to see it, would you send them?
Oh,
a
yeah,
copy?
absolutely. We get calls all the time on warrant articles, and we have copies of the warrant and the article explanations. You can
Yeah,
see
there's
on
a
the
whole
front desk.
pile in the front desk.
Yeah.
Because people come in sometimes and are interested in getting more information.
Well, this is a public hearing, doesn't seem to be a lot of interest from the public.
The vast
A lot of
audience.
people in the TV audience.
I'm willing to move favorable action on this one.
Okay.
I'm willing to vote.
All those in favor of a favorable action recommendation, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
And that concludes our business for tonight.